going to help facilitate the meeting on our part today, kind of take the role of Commerson, who used to kind of like keep us on agenda. And then, of course, you know, Tim is now on the board, and Saiki, and then Koyama, of course, has been part of these meetings all along. We can't forget our managing director, Suji-san. So that's yeah. So that's all the news that is news from our side.
For the benefit of Tim, should we just do some introduction on our side so you know who everyone is?
Sure.
That'd be good. Okay. Before we officially start, so when we start, we'll roll this one.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is H.J. Yoon. I'm Chief Commercial and Strategy Officer. I'm responsible mainly streamline relationship and customer service. And as a strategy officer, also I'm dealing with port leads and IT and booking.
You came over in 2019.
Yes, sir.
Just kind of did a little bit of assessment of how you found him.
Sandra Deutsch, current CFO, 2 months in a week, so fresh off the boat. Moved from Florida and have been part of the maritime industry through Crawley. Some of you might hear the name or not. Spent 13 years there, so moved to YT, looking forward to work with you guys.
You know me, obviously.
Eric Crichton, Vice President Operations. Aside from operations, I also have labor relations and our continuous improvement department under me. I handle a lot of the day-to-day here and work with the senior team here. Welcome, excited.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tiffany Sims. Alan McCorkle is the Executive Assistant, as well as I support Houston Terminals.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. My name is Dave Turner. I'm the Vice President of HSSE. I started as Vice President of HSSE with NYK Ports when they had series, and then when Split took off, I came over here to YTI. I also have facilities, general liability claims, workers' comp claims, and sustainability.
Everyone, Matt Hamilton, the Director of Sustainability, reporting in to Dave, overseeing all of our zero emission projects and activity.
And as a note, we will be recording the meeting, which helps us put together the minutes. Tiffany, for the second time, will be is invited to the meeting. So she's handling minutes for us. Originally, that in Cynthia's absence last time, we're going to give it another run and see if that continues to work out with her doing the minutes. And the recording helps us. If he has an issue, let us know. If not, we'll record and use it predominantly for the to help us get the minutes together. We did get a request from a couple folks in Singapore if they could get that the recording on this, that typically on that we deal with Team Fay and some others. Is that okay with everyone? So we got I figured it would be that we got that request and they could get the recording after the board meeting. Yep. Okay.
Maybe just to reciprocate here who I am.
Yeah.
Right. Tim Walsh, Alan and I, you saw him welcome me because I was NYK for a very long time, 25 years. I've been with one since startup. I've been on the commercial side since 2010, so it's been a long time since I've been on the operating side. If you go way back in time, 2001 to 2007 or so, I was the Director of Operations in Chicago, so I'm very familiar with rail, depots, and gensets and containers. The marine side is still new, as Dave has been very patient with me. I'm drinking from the big fire hose that's the LA basin here, but I've been doing this about 40 years, and if you've done commercial for any point of time, you can't help but understand some of the operating issues, right? So really looking forward to working with you at a good terminal out here. It's been that way for a while, so appreciate the collaboration and the work we'll do together here.
Thank you. And I'll look forward to working with you also.
So, again, do we have everybody here? Starting the minutes of the last meeting. Minutes of the last meeting has been approved. So, that's for number 4. We can move straight into the agenda, starting with safety and environment.
You gonna do that for me?
Okay, for safety, we'll have Dave Turner will present, and actually safety and the environmental will be safety and Matt Hamilton. And Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. So first slide, as a wrap-up of our fiscal year 2024. We had a goal of 1.0, and I am happy to say that we hit that goal at 0.99, barely hit that goal. That is the second lowest frequency we've had in the history of YTI. The only other time we beat 1.0 was during the COVID year, which is kind of an anomaly. So that was good to see. However, that 0.99 was overshadowed by the 3 significant incidents that we occurred throughout the year. And you're well aware of those incidents, other than you, Tim. 2 of those incidents happened in the rail operations. And I'm going to cover the 3 that we've had since the last meeting. One of them is definitely in this group here. Good news is one of the significant incidents, which was our foreman. His name was Darren Woodley. He has returned to work. He was the one that had fallen off a pedestal and had a fracture in his back, and that happened on 10/22. And he's a steady foreman. He's been back for about 4 weeks now. The other 2 are still off of work. As far as our leading indicators, we met both of those leading indicators. PSPs were very successful this year, and in our active engagement initiative, which we will roll out in 2025, you hear some more about that. We did meet the objective of having the meetings and tracking the engagement by our operations managers. Any questions on this slide?
No, anyways, and I appreciate your leadership, achieving less than 100, achieving 0.99. Actually, that's as you said, it's the first time we achieved this target. Right? It's although actually we saw some fatal and 3 accidents, but I think the overall performance is great. I appreciate your leadership, and then we hope continuously actually that you can keep this momentum for this race.
Thank you. Moving on our next slide. For the last quarter, we were strong during the last board meeting at 0.88, and unfortunately we did suffer 3 lost time injuries, which I'll cover in a couple slides since our last board meeting. So we ended up with 11 total lost time injuries. I already covered the frequency. One of the good news stories here is our near misses. We had 49 near misses in the 4th quarter, so reporting is a cultural thing here. Nobody pushes that, nobody asks for that, so it's just something that's an organic process here, which helps us achieve our overall safety goals. If you look at the slide here, you'll see we started off the year fairly good. And then September, we took a hit there and kind of just teetered that line of our goal all the way through the end of the year. Any questions on this slide? Moving on to our LTI by vendor. Unfortunately, YTI by itself did not hit a 1.0. YTI by itself was a 1.09. Our vendors, PCMC, ACS, and then our IT vendors and our janitorial service did assist in their safety programs as well, which helped us achieve our goal of a 0.99. PCMC did have 1 last time injury over the year. ACS, our security vendors, going strong. They're at a 2-year period with no lost time injuries. Next slide. So the 3 injuries that we did suffer during the last quarter, the first 2 were UTR drivers. The first one was a UTR driver. She was delivering a live reefer to the vessel. The crane operator lifted the load, but he only lifted it about 4 inches. So when the dock signal gave the go-ahead for her to pull forward, the rear pin of the chassis caught the reefer and jostled the driver inside of the vehicle. She was wearing her seatbelt. She has been diagnosed with neck and back pain. There has been surveillance assigned. There's been nothing from the surveillance to say that she is or isn't injured. She's just normal activities. We do have an MIE scheduled for 5/22, so we can send them to our own doctor to see exactly what those injuries are. There was an MRI conducted, but we don't have the results of the MRI yet. We expect that to happen next week. She is still off of work. And on March 3rd, we had a UTR driver that was backed into a bomb cart. After she parked, she exited the cab. She stepped on the glad hand, which is the metal device on the air hose. When she stepped on that, she rolled her ankle. She sustained a sprained ankle, no break. She is still not back to work. She has her next appointment on 5/12, and we are assigning our own doctor to evaluate that ankle sprain. And the next was one that I had talked about and I had sent to the board. The most dangerous job on a facility, in my opinion, is a rail dock aloft. And as the rail dock aloft is the gentleman that goes and does the twist locks on the rail cars when the containers either offload or load. This rail dock aloft gentleman was on the rail truck, and as he stepped off, the truck pulled away and he fell to the ground. He was a tough guy. All he asked for originally was an ice pack, but in the end he suffered some significant injuries. He had a fractured left wrist, a pubic bone fracture, and a nasal fracture. And we took this very serious. We created a rail dock aloft safety subcommittee, and we were meeting on that. And unfortunately, as David pointed out, 39 days later, which is not on this report, on 4/2 we had another one. We hadn't even got a chance to implement our corrective actions from the first one yet. So I've been doing safety for over 20 years, and that injury on 4/22 was the most deflating injury I've ever had in my career. You know, we identified a problem, we saw a problem, we brought all those rail dock alofts, all the rail management, steady foreman in this room after the first one, had lunch, talked to them about the incident, asked them what they thought we could do to be safer. The gentleman was sitting in this chair right here that injury happened on 4/2. And he happened to be the driver that caused the first injury on February 21st. It's a real tight-knit group. They've been together for 15 years. Like I said, for me personally, was the most deflating injury I've ever had, because we did some really good actions on there. We just didn't have time to put in the engineering fixes that we had. I'm happy to say we've done that, and we've continued to have meetings and continued to audit the operation, and I'll go over that in the next slide. It's just unfortunate that we had two injuries the same type so close together. We didn't even get a chance to fix it. So if you go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about that. So in the center is what a rail dock aloft truck looks like. And the rail dock aloft's right inside this truck. The idea there is so they won't fall off of the actual rail car, that they can step from the truck onto the rail car without having to climb the ladder. Over the left there, you'll see a red and green light. That was one of the actions that came out of the first root cause analysis, and that's connected to the transmission. So the dock aloft knows that if the light isn't green, he can't step from the truck to the rail car. The light only turns green when the transmission is engaged in park. That has been implemented. Actually all these have been implemented, all of them are installed. On the lower left, we installed cameras and a monitor inside the truck so that the driver can see the dock alofts, enter the vehicle safely and exit the vehicle safely. At the top of the far right, we installed a buzzer. So when the dock aloft steps off the truck, he knows the light's green, he can step off. The problem here is making sure the driver knows the dock aloft is safely back on the truck. So when the dock aloft goes back on the truck, he hits the buzzer, which notifies the driver he's safe back on the truck and we can pull away. And we also installed a rear slider window that is open so that it improves communication between the back and the front of the truck. All these actions have been very well received by the rail operations, and they're all implemented right now, and all engineering solutions help try to prevent this injury from occurring again. Any questions on this slide?
Where's the buzzer?
Sorry, what?
Where's the buzzer installed?
It's on top, but we're going to move that to the seats.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah. That was the first test, was on top.
So like a pressure sensor on the seat to let him know he's.
Well, there's going to be a buzzer, just a button.
Okay.
See, yeah.
Got it.
You know, of all these that we've implemented, the two that have received the best feedback is the cameras with the monitors, and then the rear windows, surprisingly enough, that they can really talk to each other.
Did you have a question?
I did have a question. I wanted to comment. This was very proactive. You didn't come up with one solution, you came up with four. Actually, I was in copy when this happened the second time, and Dave was kind enough to walk me through the whole thing. Like I said, I have some rail experience. I usually just walk the tracks, right? But you guys have a fairly complex problem here, and you took a bunch of different approaches to it, and it's really neat. You're right, it should extinguish the problem, but everybody's within a reasonable frame of activity, right? Nice.
You know, one of the issues, this is a harbor-wide issue, in 5 terminals in the basin here have had rail dock lofts had OSHA reportable incidents in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
5 of them. And so our rail manager met with every one of those terminals, and they're different scenarios. 2 of them were dock loft cone carts that flipped over.
Okay.
And so we decided not to go down that route
Right.
as of right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what are the other modes at the other terminals that you interviewed?
One was the truck. And
Another truck.
He
So
fell off
two-
at SSA.
Two of the cone carts, a truck, your truck,
Right.
and then the other one that was, do you know?
I'm not sure of the other one.
Okay.
But the 2 of them were actual falls off the rail car.
Oh.
These weren't really falls
Okay.
off the rail
No,
car.
no,
Yeah, those
no.
were
Fall from height.
right. One of them fell inside the well.
Yep.
Which was very substantial injuries.
What was the total cost for all of this hardware? Fairly.
I don't know exactly, but pretty cheap. I would
was
say
gonna
less
say
than
that-
$1,000 for the
Yeah, I was
hardware.
going to say it probably was not.
But it takes
So-
a day and a half for a mechanic to
Yeah,
install it,
that's
so
fine.
probably less than $3,000.
All right.
So,
Cheap and effective solution.
Should be.
hope
Should be.
so.
It seems like you've eliminated all of the gray on the position of the dock lock. And you've got an interlock on the transmission, so he can't pull forward without his foot on the brake, so.
there's Whitetail has 2 systemic safety issues. One is this dock loft issue, which keeps me up at night, and the other is UTRs pulling bomb carts,
Yep.
turning quarters, and causing collisions and damage.
Yep.
On slide 6 here, my slide 6, was our safety initiatives for the last quarter. I'd like to highlight a couple here. Number one, we have a new hire safety project, as we talked about before. When we hire new hires, they're required to do a safety project. And this safety project was very well thought out and was unique in that the lady that decided to do this, it was all on her own, and she went through the whole process herself of a translator software. She noticed that while she was out there, she had a difficult time communicating with the over-road truckers while she was working the yard operation, particularly on one incident that she was on. So she came up with the idea of investigating what is the best software for translation back and forth. And she came across this one. It's called iTranslation software. It actually sends a PDF to your email address, so you can include it in a file, and it records the voice. So if there's an issue with the outside trucker, you communicate back and forth through the translator on the phone, and it will record it, send it, and we can use that as part of our claims, whether it's a bodily injury claim from an over-road trucker or a damaged cargo claim. So hopefully that can reduce some of our costs and exposure on claims. The next is the third one down. We conducted a emergency drill. This was not a full evacuation drill. We will do that this year. But this was a drill testing our OnSolve program. It's our notification program for management in case of an incident. We did that on March 7th. That went very well. And I already talked about number 4. But number 5 is the pedestrian safety device. At TTI, they had a fatal incident in 2023 where a clerk had stepped out of a pile and RTG ran him over and killed him. Pretty gruesome fatality. And he was a worker that regularly worked here as well. The union challenged all the companies to come up with a solution, and it's taken a little while, but our solution is we hardened the wheel guards and created wheel guards that actually push something out of the way. The previous wheel guards would not do that. That was a 2023-24 project. The last part of that is a sensor that we're installing that once you touch that sensor, it's on the bottom of that hardened wheel guard, it shuts down the RTG. So it's an e-stop of the RTG. So we're in process on that. At the writing of this, we had 9 out of 15. I think we're at 10 out of 15 right now. I have to double check. Any questions on this slide? The next slide are the KPIs for 2025 going forward. I appreciate the board's feedback. We have a goal of 0.92 for 2025, down from 1.0. An aggressive goal, one that we look forward to achieving for the board of directors. That's our LTI rate. We also think it's very important that we have no high severity incidents. So we have that as a lagging indicator, 0 OSHA recordable incidents. What has changed is our leading indicators. We rolled out our 2025 YTI safety program last week, and I'll review a little bit of that in the next board meeting, but the idea there is to focus solely on engagement, to have the talk. You know, we hire our management's hired to have those difficult conversations with a difficult labor pool, and they have to hold them accountable. So our 2025 focus is laser focused on our managers having that conversation with the labor to correct the unsafe behaviors. And part of that also, you have to recognize good safe behaviors, but really the focus is you see something, you need to say something. And our 2025 motto is two things. One is have the talk, that's the marketing of the program, and the three buoys of safety. Engage and involve and educate. And I'll roll that a little bit more in the next board meeting. So these 4 initiatives that are here are all focused on engagement in different levels. Engagement with the ILW leadership through our high incident workshops. One of the high incident workshops will focus on rail safety, and another one will focus on the bomb carts, turning corners. We found here that having smaller ILW YTI management safety meetings is more productive because in a smaller meeting you get people to more freely to talk and bring up issues. So rather than 4 quarterly safety meetings, we're divided that into 12 smaller safety meetings with YTI and the ILW workforce with our operations. We also feel it's important that our management understands the cost of safety. We talk about safety for the right reason. Nobody wants to get hurt. We talk about that. We preach that. It's been our morality. It's our culture. However, it's time that our management understands the costs of general liability claims, of injuries. So we're going to have 4 injury claims reviews this year to educate our workforce, our management workforce, on the cost of the claims, because it's something that we truly don't believe they understand how it affects the bottom line of the business.
Actually, I do have a question there.
Yes, sir.
I wrote it down earlier, but what is our claims exposure every year? Do we know?
I'm sorry?
What's our number look like? What's our payout? What's it cost us?
Oh, a cost? Well, there's 2. There's our general liability claims last year was about $600,000, a little bit less, and our long-short claims is probably closer to $5 million.
So $5.6 million. Has there been any thought about? I fully agree with everything you got here. No, a lot of private chat about my experience on safety. Because my brother-in-law was one for Con Ed and a nuclear power plant. So I
Oh,
get
wow.
it. We're very close to him. We talk a lot about this stuff. Have you developed any KPIs attached to those numbers? Like
No.
saying, I'm going to go to 0.92 and I want to get from 5.6 to 4.9 or something like that.
We've had the conversations, but one of the issues with the claim cost is it matures over time. So if you look at workers' comp claims, they don't even count the last year because that year is in flux. They go to a 5-year window. From like 2020, or actually 2023, 5 years forward to that now. So we have had talks about how to do that, but we haven't quite figured out the best way to do that because they mature so much throughout time.
Okay, just asking the question. Appreciate that information.
Any discussion on this slide here? Any more questions? My favorite subject. The next slide would be the indirect source rule update. Dave, if I mess something up, Dave, I know you got my back on this one.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I'll let you know.
so
I
on,
read I think your summary is on point.
thank you. So they had a public workshop for 416, but they had a nationwide Zoom outage, so they had to cancel that meeting and they rescheduled it for 425. I was on that call. The SCAQMD is in the rule writing phase. They will be developing a rule. They will be presenting it in August. The rule is focused on the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach to provide a comprehensive plan for charging infrastructure for equipment with milestones set in there that ports must meet, which means this will flow downhill. So these milestones will fall onto the terminal operators at some point. I believe the next meeting is scheduled, I don't have the exact date, but it's scheduled for August when they have the actual public hearing for board consideration. So it looks like this is going forward.
Well, so the problem is that they're gonna have another workshop in June. There's also a meeting scheduled with the Port of Long Beach, the mayor of Long Beach, to try to put pressure on both ports to align with their suggested alternative to the SCA QMD rule. The issue is that SCA QMD is dark for the entire month of July, and they have their meeting supposedly to adopt the rule in the first week of August. The hope is by PMSA and the ports that they'll be able to push that meeting to later in the month, so that the results of the workshops and the ports trying to come together with a unified strategy that the AQMD will agree to will be allowed to mature so it can go before SCA QMD. The problem is that with most things that we see in the ports, they can't come together with a unified idea, right? And so still in flux. The danger here is that if something doesn't come together and the AQMD schedules that meeting and they proceed to rule adoption in August, it could, then it goes to the litigation phase where PMSA would have to go and say, you're potentially impacting the flow of cargo and the flow of commerce. Because the ultimate solution, according to the AQMD, is that if you hit your cap, then you're done.
Yeah.
Or you go to somebody that has credits left, essentially, and ask for those credits, which nobody's going to do, and essentially is effectively creating a collusive market where now you're trying to scheme everybody's credits. Or disadvantaging somebody that runs out of credits early and now everybody else gets to feast on their business. So there's a lot of legal exposure there. So this isn't quite done, but remains to be, if the ports could come together and come up with a unified plan that says this is how we want to proceed, AQMD, this is an alternative solution that is more in line with what CARB has, where it's a mitigation process, you have exemptions, you have, you can pay in mitigation fees, which would be preferable, not preferable to not having any rule, but certainly some type of rule mandating that if you hit this cap, you're breaking the law. And that's what AQMD's position is that if you exceed the cap, then you're essentially breaking the law. So next couple weeks, next 4 to 6 weeks will be interesting. One, to see if the ports can come together. PMSA has put out an invite to the meeting with the mayor of Long Beach. I don't know if they've got one scheduled with Bass. She's been deflecting. She has other things on her plate, like just trying to stay in office. But the PMSA continues to try to get the mayor to push Gene to get with Mario, just like Richardson and Long Beach is trying to pressure Mario. So the saga will continue.
Thanks. Yeah, I know they wrote a joint letter, which was nice. But I read that letter, and it fell well short of like...
It doesn't come up with a plan,
No,
and that's
it
what AQMD is saying, is that I appreciate you saying you're doing something, but what exactly does that look like for us?
And it didn't actually protest the rulemaking either.
No.
All right, moving on to sustainability. I have Matt here who will present sustainability presentation.
All right, thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone. So just want to provide a quick update on some of the key highlights right now happening in the sustainability world. First, to update you on some new equipment and infrastructure that is now here on the terminal. I'm happy to report we got our 8th and final Taylor EV top handler delivered late last month. Those are from our original orders back in 2022 and 23. So that closes out those purchases. The unit has been assembled. It is awaiting IT hardware installation this week. So I believe at some point next week we should be putting that into operation, and we'll have our full fleet of 8 EV tops. conveniently timed out with the go live of some new charging systems, so that ended up being nearly perfect timing. We also have, as part of our lease agreement, this is several years in the works as well, 2 of our EV UTRs will be arriving, or have already arrived, or will be arriving this month. One of those units is from a company called Mafi, which is a German manufacturer of VR trucks. Theirs was actually delivered earlier in February. The union raised some safety concerns with some other LNG Mafi units. So they had general concerns around Mafi as an OEM and as a whole. So we addressed that. We brought them into this room here, had a really productive meeting with them, agreed to address their safety concerns. The EV unit itself is designed differently than the LNG unit that had some problems over at WBCT. So we addressed that concern, agreed to put in a couple additional safety parts onto that unit before we put it in operation. So those parts have since been delivered and installed. Now that unit is also just waiting for some IT hardware before it is put into operation this month as well. And then our Tyco EV UTR will be delivered later this week, I believe, is now the schedule. It was actually just on display at the ACT Expo in Anaheim last week. I'm not sure if anybody here was able to attend that, but it has our YTI logo on the unit, so I was getting a lot of calls and some interesting comments from folks who saw the YTI logo there on the Tyco EV UTR that will be coming here to the terminal this month. So very exciting. That'll be 8 total top handlers and 2 EV UTRs, all in operation here at YTI going forward.
Matt, just real quick.
Yep.
The two, the Mafi and the Tyco, just to clarify, the 3-year demo on those
Yes,
is being done through the Port of LA.
correct.
So this is an agreement that we had when we got our 10-year extension that we're currently operating under, that this is a requirement that we had to do in order to, as part of the environmental mitigation, not mitigation really, but testing kind of thing that we're doing there. And the cost on these is,
They're paying the lease costs, so this is not out of pocket for us. They pay for those 3-year leases in full.
As long as they work.
yeah, so this is not a bad one for us. It's Port of LA thing kind of driven here. We've had to spend, Matt and others spend a lot of time getting the agreements right with them on how it reads, and always nothing ever easy with the port, but we're probably getting these, been working on this for probably about a 1.5 to 2 years almost.
Yeah, we had a different OEM identified back when I first started with the company here, I think, when this was all agreed to, and they dropped out of EV production, so we were left scrambling to try to find some alternatives, and that's where we ended up having to go with Mafi and Tyco to get one of each. So yeah, that took some time. They had to build those units brand new, and now we finally are getting them delivered this year.
Just out of curiosity, did the port give us the autonomy to find the vendors and choose what we were testing, or was this their?
They did. They were honestly. We were asking them, okay, guys, this is your lease requirement. You had Calmar originally identified, and they kind of left it in our hands to figure it out. So actually, it was Ken Fletcher on our team who ended up identifying these two, and we ultimately worked out the agreement, and then they're footing the bill.
So if at that conference they had our logo on their machine, are the other OEMs thinking that we went and bought like 30 or 40 of
Oh,
these
I
things?
got a call from RNGV saying, Matt, what the heck's going on? Why is my TI's logo on the Tyco machine over there? So all the other OEMs they all perked up when they saw that, because they know we're getting ready to buy some with some EPA funds later this year. So I let them know, hey, this is just a demo, but yeah, they did agree to put our logo on there. So points for them, but yeah, they're all.
We met with
highly
every
competitive.
OEM last week.
Yeah.
We met with every single vendor last week.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
of course.
Dave.
Yep. Yeah, met with all of them. Like I said, they're all very interested. I think we're narrowing it down right now to kind of a couple top candidates, but overall it's been good. I'm excited to get those here and actually test them out and drive them. Lastly, excited to announce our 6 new 200 kilowatts. These are high-power EV top handler chargers have been installed right out the window here in our permanent top handler parking. They actually were energized and commissioned just last week, so we technically could start using them today if we needed to, but right now we're working on resurfacing that area, the construction site, and then next week we'll be putting the paint down, so we can't park any of the units there, so we're not technically using them quite yet, but they are ready to go and will be starting to be used regularly in the coming weeks once that surfacing and paint is completed. So that puts us at 9 total high-powered EV chargers plus a propane-powered mobile charging unit for 10 total chargers against 10 pieces of equipment currently. And then obviously now we're already pivoting and getting ready in anticipation for some EPA funding to start working on that next phase of electrification.
So
I forgot actually, that's charging came from the clean energy or normal energy?
Normal energy.
Normal energy, right?
Yes.
There's no clean energy yet.
Yeah, no true clean energy. This is all grid powered or propane powered, which is obviously not clean either. So, yeah, we are really still in the very early stages of any kind of like solar analysis, so where we can incorporate that into this. As part of the EPA, we are looking at some other, battery energy storage as an option, things like that. But yeah, technically no. Again, the source of the energy is DWP power, which is still considered, I think 70% generated by fossil fuels.
So the last I saw was that LA DWP is looking to 2045 to be clean. So their last number I saw from them was 2045.
I see. But so we need to pay extra money to buy clean energy.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you want to source it for whether that's scope 2, scope 3. Okay, on our hydrogen fuel cell demonstrations, just to give everyone an update, we are just continuing to work through the legal agreements. Again, there's multiple agreements between all the different parties involved there. We are in I think the very home stretch. Should be finishing up hopefully this month, if not worst case, should be June. There are the overall demonstration project agreement between ourselves and Toyota Tsusho, which we're getting ready to sign, and then also the joinders between Toyota Motors North America and then some of the other upstream partners involved in the project. So once those agreements are signed, our Kalmar hydrogen fuel cell yard tractors are ready for delivery. So as soon as those are signed, we should have those units here in commission within 1 to 2 months. So right now we're forecasting July timeframe to have those on site and put in operation. And then again, once that agreement is signed, we'll be able to coordinate delivery where they're going to take one of our Taylor top handlers, one of our 2012 units, off-site to the US Hybrid retrofitting facility. That'll be about a 3-month time frame for them to retrofit that piece of machinery and return it to us at YTI. So we're looking at September, probably October of 2025 time frame for that. At that point, we'll then have all 4 pieces of hydrogen fuel cell equipment as part of that demonstration, and we'll be running it for the next 3 to 4 years. So big milestone. That's been quite the tall task to get all those agreements between these parties. Toyota Motors North America in particular has been very, very stingy when it comes to some of the language that they have in these agreements that all the parties have been taking some time to really agree to and come around to. So
Just to give you some background on this, a grant funded by the Japanese government is funding this hydrogen fuel cell demonstration for 4 pieces of equipment: an RTG, 2 UTRs, and a top handler. The technology of the hydrogen fuel cell is provided by a company called Toyota Tsusho. You probably might know them. They're providing the technology, the fuel cell technology. The first piece of equipment was the RTG, which was manufactured by Seiko, which is a beautiful machine out there. In Suji, we did the ribbon cutting on that a year ago tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
It's kind of crazy.
A year ago we were out here?
Wow.
That's been a year?
yeah,
It's been a year. We did a ribbon cutting on May 7th.
Yeah.
So a year ago tomorrow, we were doing a ribbon cutting out there. So that's been
Congratulations, happy birthday.
Yeah. That's been an activity for about a year now. Because we did ribbon cutting, pretty much went into operation after that. So we've had that for a year in operation. And then as Matt reported, we'll get the 2 UTRs next, which are Kalmar units that will have the retrofit on it, or Kalmar. They're produced kind of like,
They're brand new.
they're brand new, kind of like the RTG.
Exactly.
And then the top handle will be a Taylor, which will be retrofitted. So those 4 pieces of equipment are under 4-year trial paid for through this grant through the Japanese government. So this has been just a tremendous thing that we've had, that we've been a part of, kind of dropped in our lap a little bit. Sometimes that happens. We're happy to have it. We picked up, you talked about a free machine earlier. We picked up that 15th RTG, and the year we just had, we kind of needed it, so we kind of got a little lucky there.
Nicely, yes, indeed.
But this thing has performed very nicely. It's been good. It's been cost neutral to us. I think, if I'm stating that correctly, it's been cost neutral to us because we haven't had to pay anything other than the diesel equivalent for a diesel RTG. So this has been nothing but positive, and it's worked well. We've had a ton of tours of people come out and look at this thing. So just to give you background, 4-year trial for these pieces of equipment on this one.
Maybe over dinner I can ask about 20 questions that have run through my head. I do, thank you.
Well, if you want to do a night over dinner, we'd love to have that discussion. It's exciting stuff, you know. This is all
It is.
kind of as a terminal operator. We're getting educated on some things we haven't traditionally been educated on. So it's kind of cool.
So yeah, please refresh me my memory. So about retrofitting our top handlers to hydrogen. After that this demo period, they retrofit to the diesel top handlers.
So no, that was a concern that was raised, and one of the things that has slowed down some of this negotiation, which we're all on the same page now. It's just putting it on paper. So originally, Toyota Motors North America, they're the ones who produce the fuel cell itself, right? Toyota Tsusho's overseeing the project, but the fuel cells is made by the big TM&A company. They wanted, and I think still may, want to pull out that fuel cell and kind of bring it back to study it and get all the data and things like that at the end of that term. And we raised the point that you'll leave us with a useless asset at that point. Because they did not have plans to turn it back into a diesel or to give us a new fuel cell. It was basically at the end of this period, that machine would be dead. We said that's not possible. We need a machine to continue to use. So the agreement that we've come to is basically if TM&A or Toyota Tsusho, if somebody external to YTI tells us that they are going to take that fuel cell out and leave us with that useless asset, they're going to reimburse us $200,000, which will be the equivalent of pretty much the scrapped unit for the top handler. However, they've agreed and say, at least at this point, they're not promising anything until the end of the 4 years. They will, in the best of their ability, they will allow us to continue to use that fuel cell unless they have a reason to pull it out again, in which case that would trigger the reimbursement. So we believe we'll be able to continue using it beyond that and set up a new lease agreement with them to continue using that machine as is. If not, and they decide to take that fuel cell out, we'll get a reimbursement payment and then use that to buy new equipment.
At the end of this demonstration period, these two top handlers are end of a useful life or still continue to use?
The top handler would be, yeah. So I think the end of useful life would be 2027 for a 2012 unit. So it would have already been at the end of its
You picked
useful
a couple of aging tops.
Yes, exactly. We strategically chose those because they were older and would be less
We were
overall.
talking about giving them a Fantuzzi at one point.
Yes.
Even they said no.
Yeah,
We don't get to keep it. You're going to take your fuel cell with you. We'll give you a Fantuzzi.
Yeah, for free. You can do whatever you want with it.
So
Yeah, no.
we moved off that one.
You take 7 Fantuzzis.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
So
be any
yes,
hours on it.
it would have been at the end of its life anyway. Again, with the new engine in it, we think we can get more life out of it and would plan to continue to use it beyond that,
Yeah, if they
that
repowered
point.
it, that's a whole different story.
Exactly. But so really the only scenario is they decide we can't have the fuel cell to continue to use, or they won't give us a new fuel cell, in which case, okay, we're just going to trigger that reimbursement, move on and buy a new piece of equipment for ourselves.
One of the good things about this is a Gen 2. The Gen 1's currently over at Phoenix, and so they worked through quite a few of the bugs, so we should get a unit that's very productive for us.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next slide. This is probably the biggest topic of interest from the sustainability piece, our EPA Clean Ports Grant. So where this stands right now, we are still in, and luckily in the final stages, we believe, of the subrecipient agreement legal review right now between ourselves and POLA. So POLA signed off with the EPA back in end of December, I want to say very beginning of January. So technically speaking, the grant has been live with the EPA since then. However, the agreements with POLA are not official until we sign these subrecipient agreements for each terminal. So we've been working through that. The major risks and where we've kind of been held up and working back and forth is primarily around the early termination clauses. That's where obviously the most significant risk lies. As it's written, and this will not change for the EPA component of this at least, the EPA is able to terminate the entire project on just 10 days notice, and they would only be liable for the project expenses incurred up to that point. So anything that we spend before they would potentially terminate, we will be able to keep all of those funds. No risk of them clawing any of that back. However, anything not yet incurred and paid out against this project that would happen after a potential termination would be forfeit. We would be on the hook for that to either cut our losses at that point or see the project through on our own dime. Just a reminder, the project as a whole, YTI has a 30% cost share, and the remaining 70% is split between the EPA and POLA. So EPA has 50% of the total cost coverage, POLA has 20%, and then YTI the remaining 30%. Now, POLA also has some early termination language in there. However, we think this is much lower risk. Even if the EPA were to pull out, the port is sending a strong signal that they would still plan to see this through. They're committing this money for these ZE projects almost in any scenario. Nevertheless, they do still have that option. They just don't think they would use it, even in that worst case scenario. And again, that would be potentially 20%. It's exact same language around a 10-day notice. But with that said, we are trying to hold them more accountable and keep them on the hook. We know we can't do that with the EPA, but we have brought up a couple risk mitigation options to try and address this. The first is more general, which is we could front load payments. The more we pay out up front and get them paid and reimbursed means that they wouldn't have the option to take that money back if they did decide to terminate before the end of the 2028 deadline. Obviously, risk for us putting money out earlier than necessary. However, if we are concerned about potentially that termination, that's one option we could do to try to secure as much of this grant funding as possible as early as possible. And then the other one specific to POLA would be incorporating some termination fee coverage language, similar to what we did with our lease agreements for those UTRs that I just mentioned. As part of that, we were able to hold POLA accountable that if there was any kind of early termination from that project, they would pay all of the termination fees. Again, we're talking a much different scale here, so we don't know if they'll actually accept that language, but we have proposed it and are seeing what they're going to respond with. The last piece is, in terms of a risk identified, was the deadline. So December 31st, 2028 is the deadline for the project. Before the current administration, we were told that that would be flexible, they would give extensions, things like that. Now the stance seems to be anything not completed by that 2028 deadline is not going to get an extension. You will not be reimbursed for it, so this project has to be complete by the end of 2028. So with all that said, next steps, first and foremost, obviously we can't really do anything until we finalize those agreements, so we are working our best to get that completed as soon as we can. We are at a point now where I think there's general agreement on the overall subrecipient agreement. We have submitted a revised exhibit which specifies the milestones that would allow us to submit reimbursement requests. So once that is complete, we think we'll be ready to go and signed off, and therefore what we're told is that means we can start spending that money. At that point, we would obviously, because of these timings or timelines and the risk involved, we would plan to start the procurement process for all the remaining shea that is included, and you can see the table there that specifies the actual different categories that the project is broken into. And that includes also the engineering and infrastructure work that we would need to get started on right away in order to have chargers to support the EV equipment that's included here. The last thing I'll call out is, as part of our, and I'm sure everybody in this room is familiar, but as part of our FY24 shea CapEx request, it was brought up that can we convert the diesels that were requested to EVs, knowing that we have this EPA funding coming this year? We agreed, and Taylor basically made us a promise that they could get us a short 8-month lead time if we submit those orders as quickly as possible, or risk being moved to the end of the queue and probably looking at 12, 16, 18 plus month lead time for that. So we agreed, we moved forward with that quickly, made that purchase, secured our spot. We expect those 6 units to be delivered by the end of this calendar year. That was back in like the February timeframe, I want to say. As we got deeper into these contract negotiations on the port and started reading through the language, it was brought up by the port that, again, technically speaking, from the EPA standpoint, this project is open, but from the port standpoint, we are not official until we sign that document. And any expenses incurred before that timeline are in question, I'll say. They're not ineligible completely. We are working through that. We heard from Jacob Goldberg, who unfortunately has just moved to the Long Beach side of things, that would not be a problem and that we would still get our full reimbursement. But now there is kind of this new risk where the down payment that we made on those first 6 units, are we still going to be able to get the full 70% reimbursement that we requested on the total cost of those units? Or are we now only going to get 70% coverage for the remaining 80% of that payment? So Again, potentially some lost grant revenue there. The port wants us to spend this money on EV equipment, so at least from the non-lawyers that are involved in these conversations, they haven't expressed, they've expressed that we should be reimbursed completely still, but that is technically, I think, still up in the air. We have not gotten a full resolution on that quite yet.
Simple, hopefully a simple question.
Yeah.
Try and ask for a simple answer. EVs are considerably more expensive than regular equipment.
Correct.
Call it that way. They're trying to lever us into signing the document for we're ready. The opposite leverage is, well, the heck with that, then I'm just going to go back and tell Taylor, that we're going to reconvert it back to diesel, right? We're going to go out of EV if you don't tell us you're going to reverse this. Financially, does that make sense? Did we do the math on that?
We have not. The 20% down payment is a requirement for EVs only because of the cost of the batteries. They essentially say you got to give us 20 down so you can pay for the battery. So I think, technically speaking, that would be, I think, some costs. We would not get that back if we told Taylor we want the diesels now. They'd say, okay, great, but you already committed that 20% has been spent on batteries for other units.
Can't convert the 20% into conventional?
They have been open to, other ways for us to work through this process.
That's your opposite leverage. I was just curious because the port's playing a lot of different games all over the place right now.
Exactly. And to your point, the port even admitted point blank in our most recent conversations on the contracts that they are changing one of the exhibits that they've already submitted to us. They just wanted it pushed through because their goal is to move this forward as quickly as possible, get everything signed, and then they'll update things after the fact, all because of the risk of the more we can get on the books and official now makes it harder from a legal standpoint for federal administration to try and claw back or terminate any of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so short answer, we're still working through a lot of that. We don't have the full resolution to it, but all the parties involved, Pola, Taylor, they've all expressed a willingness to help us work through this so we can get fully reimbursed, but we don't have specifically what that looks like yet.
And I'll just add, from a zero emission standpoint, as if we were to invest in diesel equipment right now, we could potentially face a write-off of equipment if we don't reach a full life cycle.
Oh, I understand. I was just talking about negotiating strategy, not actual action.
Yeah.
The good news is both the Port of Oakland and Port of LA have been drawing on those EPA grant funds. So they have been already drawing on them for their projects. So the money's there.
Okay. There's no other questions on that. Just two quick other grant updates for you guys. Last meeting, we reported that we applied for and were optimistic on a VW Mitigation Trust grant through CARB. We were very surprised to learn since then that YTI's project was put on the wait list for that. I requested an explanation and was not given one. However, what I'm hearing through a couple different contacts that I've been trying to follow up with on this, two possibilities on why that's the case. One, our documentation, because the equipment that we're trying to scrap is so old, we did not have some of the documentation, and the kind of supplemental documentation we tried to submit may be, being questioned by CARB. Again, this is almost 20-year-old UTRs. We even went back to CalLift, our vendor, and asked them if they had any sales records, things like that, and nobody keeps anything past, I think, 10, 15 years. So that wasn't an option. The other possibility that I heard and was brought up was that we asked for too much and that they want to spread this money around a little bit more. Again, I've tried to get in touch with somebody so I can express that we'd be willing to scale this back. We just want to get some funding and try to expand our EV fleet here. But CARB, for whatever reason, has been unresponsive. So that's unfortunate. The good news is we weren't rejected, we were just waitlisted. So still potential to get some grant coverage there. Lastly, on the hydrogen hub funding, this is considered at risk, similar to a lot of the other federal programs right now. We've been hearing very mixed messages from across the industry. We were expecting as of last year that each terminal would be getting roughly $10 million in grant funding, specifically for hydrogen fuel cell related projects and equipment. There was a report that came out in the LA Times, an article that actually featured our hydrogen RTG right on the cover as a nice, beautiful picture of it. But the article itself was about how there were reports coming out that they would be targeting California and Democrat-led states funding specifically for these types of programs. so that the California Arches program was significantly at risk. Since then, I've also heard, though, from Mike Galvin and folks at POLA and even some folks at ACT Expo last week that they're still planning to move forward as is. Nothing has been officially frozen or revoked yet, so they're going to keep moving forward as if everything's fine, and that we should expect to get some information in the very near future on whether or not that's going to move forward. So more to come on that program. I just wanted to make everybody aware that definitely some higher levels of risk around that one. Okay, any other questions?
That's a lot, Matt.
Yeah.
Appreciate all the hard work on that, and obviously he's there with us, a very active arena on grant money, EV, ZE, everything else. So we're right in the middle of it, and like where we are on that. But any other questions on that you would like to touch on? We'll shift into financial performance. A couple things here. This is we got a new deck kind of here on financial performance. With Sandra coming on board, her and I had a dialogue, and she wanted to kind of change the look and feel of it a little bit, present a little bit differently. I was okay with it. I like it, but my opinion that is not as strong as the board's opinion. So we're open to any feedback on what we presented. I think maybe there's some level of detail that we took out of the old methodology that we took out we might want to put back in. She's not going to cover every slide in here, but this is something new look for us. And we're open to feedback, and either today or tonight, give us feedback on it, and we'll adjust. But want to give her some free reign as some new look on things. I kind of like it, but very sure to hear y'all's feedback. And at that point, I'll turn it over to Sandra.
Thank you so much.
Our first board meeting.
Yes. All right, so over the next few minutes, we'll spend some time reviewing our financial results for fiscal year 24. We'll touch on financial KPIs as well as complementary operational KPIs. We'll move into how did we do against our budget fiscal year 24, and also touch on our balance sheet and cash flow statement as well. With that being said, we'll just get grounded here from a perspective of how does our financial performance look like for fiscal year 24. There's a typo at the top. So this is our final result for actual fiscal year 24. We closed out the year with revenue of $420.7 million, dropping down to EBITDA of $62.4 million, a cash position of $61.3 million, which is a very good liquidity position. Assets recognized at $247.5 million, and debt at $15.6 million. That's just to get us grounded from a full financial statement view. I'll skip over the following slides as we will be touching on this as I'm reviewing the actuals versus budget on page 24. So let's see here. Those are
Congratulations. 60 over 60 million
Remember 3 months ago? Gave you my word, Suji.
We did it.
860. We did it.
It's so happy actually.
We were happy. We're happy you're happy.
So I'm just a messenger since I joined pretty late here, so all the kudos to the team here and the rest of the employees in the building and out there working. So we'll shift the conversation to how do we actually do from an actuals versus budget and which type of variances we recognize across the P&L. At revenue, we closed out the year as stated at $420.7 million. Within the revenue number, we recognized 173 vessels, 827K vessel moves, 233 rail moves, and 27.35 vessel productivity.
Just stop everybody, we're on slide 24.
Yes.
We jumped ahead.
Yes. Within, just recognize how our revenue is split. OME is our largest customer. Our largest service is FP1 at 33% of our total revenue. Largest revenue category was recognized as obviously vessel throughput at 74% of total revenue. When comparing revenue to the budget, we estimated $394.5 million, which brings us to a positive variance of $26.2 million for 2024. How did we achieve that? There was additional extra loaders between vessel and rail. There was 49.6K of additional vessel moves, 74.9 of rail moves. Between those two, we're looking at around 33 million or so to change. And then other revenue that came in higher at 2.6 million, which resulted from a demerged revenue CMA CGM rail diversion project. To offset those positive increases across those three buckets, we did incur a negative impact under our M&R revenue component. Two factors impacted M&R. One is the chassis repair revenue that we were not able to recognize the full budgeted revenue that we projected. That's an industry-wide experience. Here, everybody is impacted, just from an ownership perspective, that's changing. The terminals are recognizing the lower M&R chassis repair opportunity. In addition to that, we also were faced with a new service in, I believe, 2023, which we utilized the data points to budget a reefer volume for 2024. Those reefer volumes came in lower, and therefore we also took a hit there from an M&R reefer revenue perspective. That was a 10.35 million negative variance. Any questions on revenue? Okay. Jumping down to direct expenses, as expected, direct expenses came in at a higher or a negative variance of 21.7 million, with actuals being 303.3 million versus budget of 281.6. Just to kind of get us grounded, within direct expenses, we have direct labor, which does include our stevedore and M&R direct labor, and also the workage that is tied to our volume. So there are a couple of factors that obviously impacted the negative variance and resulted in the 21.7 negative impact. We did have higher direct labor for vessel and rail, which was in correlation with our increased volume for vessel and rail. We also, to offset those increases, we did manage to have additional gate closures than what we originally planned for. Eric, please correct me if I'm wrong here. The total gate closures was at 52 without the holiday gate closures that occurred in fiscal year 24. And if I'm not mistaken, we budgeted for 15 without the 5 holidays. So a major change there between actuals and budget that contributed to lower labor for yard and gate at 2.8 million. In addition to that, we were able to reduce our M&R labor due to our lower volumes coming in for chassis and reefers, and that was at 5.3 million.
Sorry, quick question. What was the delta on the M&R?
From a labor perspective?
No, from a revenue.
From a revenue, between the chassis and the reefer volume, 10.3 million, lower than expected.
What's the breakdown between the two?
I do not have that in front of me, but I can get it after the meeting.
Thank you.
I'll just note that. Jumping down to the operating expenses. Within operating expenses, we have our general admin as well as our OCU team. Obviously, any SG&A included that's supporting our admin and OCU, and within that number, we also have depreciation. We closed out the year in operating expenses at 64 million versus 65.3, so we recognized a positive variance of 1.3 million between actuals and budget. That positive variance resulted from just timing of some hires and general terminations, and then professional fees that actually came in lower than expected. To offset slightly offsetting that, those savings was higher depreciation, when we completed the budget for fiscal year '24, we estimated lower depreciation than what it actually came in by $1.6 million. Okay, any questions on operating expenses? All right, other income, just a quick note on this component. Within other income, we primarily have interest income and interest expense. We were able to recognize higher interest income by $0.5 million between the budget and actuals. That brings us to our operating income profit loss before tax of $53 million versus what we estimated at 46.7, with a positive variance of $6.3 million, or a 13% increase. EBITDA at 62.4 versus our estimate at 54.9, with a recognized positive variance of $7.5 million. Okay, switching over just quickly again to touch on some of our financial KPIs. Our gross profit, gross margin, we recognize gross profit at $117.5 million versus budget $112.9. Gross margin was at 27.9 versus budget at 28.6. This tells us that we slightly increased our direct cost at a higher percentage than revenue. Operating income and operating margin. Operating income, as mentioned, was 53.1 versus 46.7, with an operating margin of 12.6 versus 11.9. EBITDA margin, and EBITDA, I'll just touch on the margin, was 14.8 versus 13.96. And direct expense percent of revenue was actuals recognized at 72.1 versus what we budgeted at 71.4, which complements what we just talked about on the gross margin perspective. Which, by the way, is a very good split between direct expense and OPEX expense as a percentage of revenue. This shows us here the OPEX expense percentage of revenue that it's at 15.12 versus 16.5, and that is a percentage that we definitely want to keep low. Any questions on the financial KPIs? Okay. So from an EBITDA perspective, kind of touching on what I already summarized, but more on a contribution margin kind of view and EBITDA only, we walk here from a budget of $54.9 million to our final results of 62.4. Margin from extra loaders was recognized at $10.6 million. The merge from CMA, CGM at 3.3. Operating expenses reduction was at $3 million. Please note that this does not include the depreciation that offset that $3 million. Workage, which I believe I skipped over in the last slide. Workage, there was a mistake for fiscal year '24 budget that was made for workage. The volume that was estimated or used to calculate workage was not correct. So this was a actual budget oversight, I'll call it, as a $8.8 million. That is not related to any volume or anything of that sort. Our workage did increase from budget to actuals, but the other portion of it, I believe around $4 million or so, is related to the volume. And then various other expenses that came in slightly higher at 0.6, which brings us to 62.4 million. Any questions on the walk? Next one is basically just summarizing what we talked about in a more detailed view. I will quickly touch on it because I think it tells a good story here. So from 54.9 to 62.4, margin and volume was 7.8. Vessel revenue per lift was slightly lower by 0.9. Higher for rail revenue per lift at 0.4. M&R revenue per lift was negative 13.2, and other revenue was at 4.3 million. We were able to recognize direct labor savings or cost per lift. That's within that number you have the gate closures And then jumping over to M&R, cost per lift, reduced mechanics, obviously related to the chassis and reefer volume. And then wharfage cost per lift that we discussed already, 8.8. And then other direct cost per lift at 3.3, and operating expenses at 2.8 positive. Okay. Next slide touches on our operational KPIs, actuals versus budget. Actual vessels came in at 172.9, 173. Budget was 175, so that's a negative variance of 2.11. Vessel moves, we recognized 827K versus 707K. That is a variance of 49.6K, or 6% increase in volume from a vessel perspective. Rail recognized a 74.9K increase, or 47% volume increase. And then vessel productivity came in slightly lower by 2% from 28.05 to 27.35.
Just a quick comment that the prior vessel record was, highest throughput was 780 in our fiscal year 2017. And the rail moves was, I think, 235, Eric. And I forget what year that was in.
Stealing my thunder, Alan.
That's okay, well.
There's 238.
We'll shift our focus to the balance sheet. A very strong balance sheet. I was very happy to see it as I joined YTI. Assets, as mentioned, at 247.5 million. I'll just slide that comment in here. Liabilities at 102.4 million and equity at 145.1 million. Current ratio is at 1.5, which is a very strong ratio. And debt to equity ratio is 0.7, which again is an outstanding ratio. One thing to note here from a liabilities perspective, once again, it's a very low debt. There's only 15.6 million in debt, which is related to a refinanced debt structure. I believe the refinancing took place in 2024 for cranes that were still paying on the finance lease with CMFL at a interest rate of 8.2. That matures in 2031. Okay.
So just to maybe skip ahead, I saw that you're thinking of retiring that debt early.
We are, I think there was a point of discussion at WJ, we can touch on definitely. It was more of a, how do we look at our cash, what are our future CapEx needs, and how do those two things complement each other?
You guys don't have to worry about poison pillar or anything like that, right? So you can not worry about your debt ratio particularly much. So spending 8% interest, why? Right? That's the question.
Yes, and Saiki-san helped with the conversation as well. I did not have a chance to read the contract, but I believe there is a fee.
Prepayment penalty.
Yes,
If it's less than the 8%, it makes sense given
Yes.
you're a bit cash rich right now, right?
Yeah.
We will look at, which is a good position to be in, but
I
it sets you
believe,
up for future investment and use of your cash for CapEx expenditures, right?
But on the other hand, actually, so we need to have a good balance, actually. Liability is actually, it's, we need to have, leverage, using a leverage, actually. So
Okay.
there's maybe some certain debt actually better to have. Otherwise,
I was thinking mid debt.
yeah, that's it all depends on on the interest rate though. Let's say we have cash, but it's better to use cash though. But on the other hand, better to use leverage.
Understood.
So
It's
that's
all
the
about how
kind
you use
of
your
balance, right?
Well, I noticed they were talking about retiring the debt. I was wondering if that's where they were headed.
okay, shifting to our accounts receivable, aging. As of March 31st, we recognized 35.4 million in accounts receivable. Majority of that outstanding receivable is under current, which is a good position to be in. only 0.4 million was in 120 and over days, which, by the way, most of that has been collected. There's only 100 and some change in that as of yesterday. So that's a good collection effort that is between our AR team as well as HA and everybody else. So that's much appreciated. Nothing like not having a collection problem. Next page gives us a little bit of more of a detail on where how our aging breaks up between our customers. With no surprise, OMB is our biggest customer with 20.4 million of outstanding. Most of that outstanding is under current, and then others fall under OMB. Any questions on AR? We deem all of these accounts collectible, so there's no concern on any of them. I will note here the 328K negative OI credit. That is related to a roadability, labor, and storage fee that we end up charging tracking to Moro. I believe there was a overbill occurrence that happened between July and December of 2024 that was recognized and corrective actions were put in place, and therefore we carry that on our books right now. We'll probably work with them to offset some of these outstanding bills and clean this up. Okay. And that brings us to our cash flows. As stated, very good position. We started the year with 29.4 million. We added 64.2 million from our operating activities. That is related to our strong financial year, resulting in additional liquidity. We also invested and continue to invest in our CapEx. That amounted to 22.1 under our investing activities. And then I believe, and this is what you were referring to, we did actually repay a long-term debt that was on the books. I want to say that was around 7 million and some change, if I'm not mistaken. That occurred in May-June timeframe of 2024. So that already occurred in 2024. That's not related to what's actually outstanding with the financial lease. Which brings us to our ending balance of 61.3. Within that 61.3 million, we do have 5.5 million of reserved cash. The reserved cash is related to the PMSA CARB credit, as well as the OCU severance that we're tied to, and that's only $500,000. The rest is for the PMSA CARB credit.
But then current cash is in the bank, right? Is the rest of your money. They're producing some interest.
Yes,
right? Is how much interest rate?
I apologize, I have not read the clauses just yet. So I will get you that information. However, I have the interest rate, I don't know. But I do know that we recognized interest income of $1.4 million.
$1.4 million in the fiscal year 2024.
2024, yes. And we budgeted 920K, which tells me that we estimated the interest, it might be a floating interest rate.
Yeah.
So without looking into actual contracts, I will not be able to.
I see. So maybe average like a 2% or something?
Probably, it could be that, yes. Depending on what the balances were throughout the year and so on, so we have to see.
Is it possible making like a 6-month CD or a 1-year CD type of on there?
Yes, and your question is very timely, Saki-san, and the rest of us touched on this a little bit, right? With a good cash position, we definitely want to make sure that that cash is doing something for us. To Tim's point too, that we pay off that and not get charged there. So what we will be looking at is more of a long-term plan for our CapEx, and how does that play a part into our current cash balance and what the future is going to add to that cash balance. So we are starting the analysis and hope to complete that over the next month or two to be able to determine what do we need to do. In addition to that, we bank currently with SMBC. The loan is with SMFL, which is all under one ownership. Which other entities out there, from a bank perspective, bank institutions are willing to give us better deals, right? We are paying, I think quarterly, $25K from our just account fees, right? Can we go out there and shop a little bit more?
Fee or something like that.
Absolutely. So all of that will be within our scope of evaluation to determine what can this cash do for us.
Then, do you know is the current SMFL interest rate for the because we have a SMFL financial loan, I mean, collects on equity loans for the SCS country grade.
I'm sorry.
I mean, because we have debt, right? So debt is what kind of interest?
8.2.
8.2.
That's for the finance lease.
Okay.
Yes.
So can we replace on some other good finance loan or equity loans? Because 8.2 is a little bit high side, right?
It is.
Yeah.
But
That's why I was talking about retiring
Yes.
higher debt, higher interest debt.
But it aligns with the timing, right? When, if you think about 2024, equipment financing in 2024 was on average 8.5 to 9%. So I'm not surprised to see that, and I'm not sure why that point the decision was made. Maybe Alan, you can jump in to refinance that, or Seki-san, but that we can definitely look at and see what other bank institutions could potentially give us this if the fees are not too high to end that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's as we discussed last time, and we don't have a strong intention to pay dividends right now. I mean, immediately, and then we want to use the cash for the future growth plans. So then waiting for that plans, I mean, you can take times, but again, it's maybe anyhow we don't need to spend 60 millions immediately. Maybe 20 millions, 10 millions, and this year maybe another 10 million, 20 millions next year kind of thing. So it's a certain period we need to keep a cash somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's better to think of what is the capex plans, what is like a payment plans, then how we saving money, where and how, right? So I think that's a total money management plans. It's together with capex plans actually. It's will be required actually.
Yeah, understood. And I think, as you said earlier, or as you just said, you mentioned at the back end of the meeting last time about, for us to kind of strategize how we can invest that money back into the business, and looking at both the long term. We now have our 10-year capex plan. I think the big thing that we're working on is, we're going to need some additional RTGs. We believe we're going to need to replace a couple of cranes, maybe even raise a couple of cranes. The thought is that as we close out 2024, which we're doing now, this is kind of a wrap up of 2024, is that the next thing on the kind of the docket for us is to have that kind of internal meeting and high level meeting amongst us here to figure out, okay, let's go get the capex back up. Let's look at what we need to do with our cranes based on what we think the upsizing of ships will be, and figure out what that plan would be on the kind of long-term money management plan. And what's been good is having Sandra come in. It's kind of like a new set of eyes, which has kind of been some refresh there because we've been looking at it through the same lens. And I think that kind of helps that discussion along a little bit. And my expectation is that we'll have something to discuss at the next board meeting along that line.
Thank you. Then one thing actually is I want to thank you very much for your summaries for the fiscal year 2024. But it's our board meetings usually it's every 3 months is coming. So that's why we want to see a last quarter performance. Right, it's
Quarterly.
Quarterly. Yes, yeah, and because actually this is like a closing the finance years, then you summarize all the years. That's it appreciated, and then it's also it's a good numbers. So, but it's regularly because we are meeting 3 months, every 3 months. So the quarterly, but the quarterly is we better to see is performance. So that's the one point. And also actually it's a little bit complicated. It's better to see last year performance as well. Yeah, it's compared to the budget. Also, it's $1 like a comparison, but also it's compared to the last year performance, like
Right, yeah.
fiscal year 23. I mean, the previous year's comparisons. Also, actually, so we want to see
Okay.
at the same time. But it's a little bit complicated. It will be more busy on the slide, and we are quite familiar to the numbers actually. So that's we are mind actually to see a busy slide also, right? Then another thing is the last ones actually because we are ONE. Thank you very much. And your colors exactly that's our company.
Thank you for noticing.
Yes. So but the slide looks like a one high is in the color.
Wow.
But I said you are aware, so you are close actually. That's offset actually.
Well, I fixed the problem
Yes.
without even knowing.
So that's if you don't mind change colors of what's right.
Absolutely.
That would be perfect. That would be perfect.
So that will definitely be something that we take into consideration because I took colors that were already here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, we did this in recognition of the AP1. Because this is our first year of the full AP1, so we'll ship back to the
Yeah.
agenda.
That's really appreciate the AP1's performance.
Because all the work that went into
Right.
AP1, yeah, so no one switched back to the magenta yet.
Just a half kidding actually. Yes. Right. Thank you.
Very much appreciate the feedback. Good feedback for us, and thanks for sharing that, and we'll make the adjustments. Absolutely. We're probably right around the halfway point, but I was going to say if we need to take a break for, I know you guys have had a long day, or keep going.
Sorry, I have request. So actually, we also received questions in GHQ side. In GHQ, recently frequently. I don't know why, but they ask net profit result after tax, the YTI, rather than EBITDA. I somehow show the EBITDA numbers, but they say, oh, we are not interested. We need to know the net profit after tax.
Tax, okay, because we knew you wanted to see something a little bit different. Is the next,
I thought you had it on.
Well, maybe it's difficult to calculate the tax rate, maybe just
I thought it was like 42, 43.
we had profit before
PT.
tax.
Before tax.
We had it before tax, you want after tax. Okay. We knew you want, I know we got that request a few months ago that you wanted to start, I thought it was before tax.
But it's a LLC, so LLC is a shareholder pay tax,
Yeah,
not the entity.
the entity, the tax rolls into OME ownership.
Yeah.
Yes, but just I'm not sure why, but just compare the good company's profit and loss. Then just they want to know if YTI is independent company. So,
Tax rolls into ONE's.
From my understanding of the ownership and the structure, yes.
This LLC company that the shareholder pay tax, not the entity.
yeah, just I will explain like the past. If still they say something maybe.
Okay. Okay.
And we do have property taxes, that's different.
That's
than,
different, yes.
Net and
Yeah,
net
we're
income
talking,
taxes.
yeah,
Yeah.
talking.
Okay. I'm sorry, should I say any other questions on the financials? Okay. Wei Jin, you want to take a break?
Sure, yeah. Let's take 5 minutes break.
5-minute break? Then we quit. Thank you.
Yeah. About the tax ratio, just for your reference, ONE internally using the 29.84% for the YTI, the tax income tax ratio for internal reporting purpose. So you can use the same percentage.
Oh, that's good. That's
Okay,
good to know.
good to know.
How much?
29.84. 29.84.
Okay.
You need a better account.
All right, 5-minute break? Everybody good? Yeah, thank you. Senator, thank you. We'll shift gears over to the lease negotiation. I got a few things to touch on here. We can go a little out of order, but no, I'll just go in order. So what we've been working, totally forgot I had one slide to mess it up. We're making some progress. It's going so making progress. Hoping to pick it up here, which I say every time, but we are picking it up. We're making progress. It's just got to move fast when it's moving, and that's kind of the main thing here. But there's two different buckets here. One is what we're doing with the port. There's two, what we got going on internally. And with the port, what we've got completed since the last board meeting is the addendum to the IR description. So when we talk about lease, there's two key pieces that touch on environment. One is the EIR addendum, and one is section 104. So the EIR addendum has two components to it. It's got the description, and it's got a bunch of other stuff. The description we've gotten done, and I think the court's fundamentally okay with it. The other part of the EIR addendum gets into SQL language and some other aspects that they are drafting we haven't seen yet. But we expect to get that sometime in the summer here, the second part. So the EIR addendum as a document will have two components. One we've kind of drafted, they feel pretty good with. The other they're drafting. Well, let me rephrase that. The draft they gave, we went through it, we came to a kind of a tentative agreement on that EIR addendum description. And then the other part of the EIR addendum, we're waiting on their draft, which we expect to get probably in hopefully another month. The second part is 104 language, which we had, as it relates to environment, we had tentatively agreed to with one exception. And that exception was, how do we handle diesel equipment and it potentially being grandfathered past 2030? So we had expressed that to the port, and what the port had explained is they had gotten that, they had heard some of that from maybe another tenant. So they came back with a new document that they gave us on 424. They're almost near the end of April, last week of April. They gave us some new language on the section 104 language that talks about the grandfathering of equipment. I think the language is better. Have not had a chance to meet our legal counsel, Tara, yet, because she was away for a week. She's been kind of out since we've had that language. So we've got a meeting with her tomorrow to go through several components of things that are outstanding. One is the new section 104 language. What they've done regarding the grandfather, new wording talks about going with the OEM useful life of the equipment language, that we could use it for the useful life as determined by the OEM, which CARB has accepted in some other applications, and or any applicable law that comes up that would say you can't do that. So I think that's an improvement from what we had before, because before we had nothing. Now we've got where it's being linked to the useful life as determined by the OEM, and unless a law comes in that says it's got to be something different, better language.
So the concern is that if you purchase something in 2028 and come 2035, it was no longer a viable piece of equipment, right? And that was without the language in there, you were buying something that was only good for half a life. Right. So inserting it to the OEM is beneficial for any kind of purchase.
I think so.
Yeah, before the question was, and has been, that, okay, everything's off the books by 2035, regardless of what year I bought it.
Provided they don't statutorily write it out, correct?
Right, by law.
Right.
Gotta be law. Now, you brought up a good point about 2035, because our original 104 language says we had to commence to ZE before 2030,
right,
which we've already done, so we've already met that criteria, and to be completed by 2035. The next big change they did in section 104 is they took out the 2035 language, and they left that open-ended. And that can be viewed a couple different ways. It can be viewed, it doesn't set but it still says you got to begin transitioning by 2030.
Right.
So the fact they took out the 2035, I think, is a positive, and I also think it's what opened the door for the useful life.
Yep.
So I think this revised 104 is good. I don't think I've shared it with our internal O&E, what I call the O&E kind of lease team, which has Adrian, yourself, Psyche, Dave,
yeah.
I think Ryan, I think you might be on there too. And once I review it and get alignment with Tara where we are, then I'm going to send that to you guys this week. So you'll have what that new language looks like. And that's traditionally how we do it. Once I'm good with it, send to you guys. You got any further comments, y'all come back, and then I'll go back to the port with it.
Yep.
So I think that was a very positive development on section 104. The other part we're doing as part of this, we're just kind of reaffirming the useful life of all the key equipment with the OEMs, just so we know what those timelines. I know a top panel on top of my head is 15 years, but we've been talking a lot about that. The ones I get a little more fuzzy And then Sandra brought up a good point about,
On our books, from a fixed asset perspective, we might be depreciating that equipment for a longer period than what the in old ADAS.
With the OEM.
what the useful life is.
So we're doing an analysis to understand that. Hopefully they align nicely, and we will not face any kind of risks from a balance sheet perspective, which would end up on an income statement for a write-off.
You're right. So you have something coming from us, depending how the meeting goes tomorrow, to the internal O&E lease group. I'll have that sent out either before the weekend or first part of next week, depending on how my review goes with Tara. I like the language. I've had some just phone call with her. I think we feel pretty good about it.
This is positive.
It's positive.
Compared to how everything else has been going along, the fact that there was like some common sense applied to this is good to see. I hope it applies elsewhere.
It's like the first good news I've gotten, first good news we've gotten in like 2 years
I
here.
hope it applies in their commercial considerations as well.
Yeah, right. The second thing with Pola is that they had committed to provide the red line to our red line on the non-commercial terms, which is a pretty robust document. They committed that on April 4th. We got it last week. And that was after a lot of back and forth of why we're not getting it, attorneys out, all kind of litany of excuses. We finally got that, looked at it, and we're going to be reviewing that tomorrow. And also be reviewing that internally with Tara tomorrow also. And then once I feel pretty good where we are, whatever changes we agree or not agree with, then I'll kick it to the O&E internal lease team. So you'll have that document coming at you so that I can get your feedback on that before I go back to the port with our response to their red line of our red line on the commercial. So we have gotten some progress on the environmental language. We've gotten some progress on the non-commercial terms. They did take some of our red lines that we offered and they accepted them. However, it's not in balance. There's more they didn't accept. And there's also 25 notations in there that they've got to review with the board. Where they've got what we have, and they said we got to consult with the board. We got to consult with the board of our commissioners. So the question back to the port staff is, when have you got that meeting planned? Because that's they got what they're doing with their attorneys, and they've got some they feel are sensitive enough they need to take to their board, which is good. They're considering it, but when's the board? When is that going? What's the timing of that? And I'm hoping to have an answer on that here by tomorrow. That's where we are with the port on those things.
Sorry, I got a very simple question as the new guy in the room. When do we actually expire our lease exactly?
We expire in exactly, as of May 1st, 17 months. So it would be September 30th of 2026.
Thank you.
So from a historical standpoint, and Tara backs this up, nobody's ever completed on time. Everybody's gone extended. How do we get to getting this completed by September of 26?
Well, I've requested a meeting with Gene, partly because of this delay we got on the non-commercial terms. And I can call Gene directly. I mean, I can do that. We've got the relationship, but I'm trying to work through the port staff and make sure we do it the right way and not get I'm not at a point where I need to start, popping noses yet and kind of creating any agita here. But I've got a lunch meeting with port staff tomorrow, and I'm going to talk about this in the discussion I want to have with Gene Dave to answer your question and say, we need to get this thing done. And what we're putting a lot of it on, obviously we just need to get it done and get it done, but the dollars that we need to invest in zero emissions to get financing on that, we can't sit here with a lease expiration sitting in front of us. We can't go with a 5-year extension or something in order to get the funding to support zero emissions. Nor can we complete these demos. One of them is their demo, which is a 3-year demo that just got started. So we're not going to get a year into it. We're going to get right about a year and a half into it before we're not going to finish that demo. Nor can we get the NATO hydrogen fuel cell. So we're going to put a lot of this on clean air since that's so sensitive to them that we need to get this done. Plus the general commercial things we do that, our customers could find another home if we don't have a lease, and that home could be Port Long Beach. that seems to resonate well with them. So that's the conversation I really want to have with Gene, and in order to get Gene to put a little more push with the city attorney and with his people.
And ultimately, it's gonna have to get in front of the commissioners, and you're gonna have to win them over,
Yeah, it will.
right? I mean, so the port staff can be in agreement, Gene can be in agreement, but there's gonna have to be an education process with them. So once this goes before them, we're not playing back and forth for months beyond September 26th.
That's right. And I've had conversations with port staff about, they've got a lot of new commissioners. This is their first lease, for the most part. They've done some extension with Phoenix, but this is, but really this is the first one of this level, I think, for some of the new commissioners, and there's gonna be an education period. With that being said, we need to leave we need to get to where it starts through the approval process, really on both sides, because we know that there's also, on our side, some of this magnitude has a lot of levels of approvals that we need to start that beginning of calendar year 2026. We originally said we were trying to target summer of 2025. Not going to happen, but I think we're talking. We fundamentally need to know we're with the sunset 17 months away, which is in clear sight now. Then we're in this new calendar year. We need to finish this thing and leave 6 months
There needs to be some
get all the
runway.
approval. Yeah, 6 months for the approval process. So we need to have this thing done to where we're in agreement, and now it's going through both sides by that time. That's not counting the time that they've done to update during the process, any of us, right? So that's where my head is. But to answer your question, to get this thing moving is to get with Gene and make sure that we understand that unlike other leases, this is the first lease that's going to have the zero emissions mandate hanging out there, this 2030 thing, and the money it takes. I mean, to go back to your question, much of zero emission equipment is double the cost of a diesel. Almost across the board, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, it's double the cost. And that's big money. And that's not counting infrastructure, which is more big money. These charging stations out here, so we really want to impress upon Gene that we need to treat this differently than any other lease negotiation before it.
But it needs to be fair also in the fact that it's doubled now, but just like everything else, in 5 years or 10 years, when the next leases come up, the cost of the infrastructure and the cost of the EV equipment is going to be much lower than it is right now. When you look at how much the top handlers and the UTRs and everything else, over the course of the maturity of the technology, it continues to come down. That needs to be taken into consideration when they're looking at these costs.
Getting an advantage over the first guy in the door that we are.
Yeah.
Is what you're essentially
I mean, it'd
And
be
grant
great
money
for
won't, and grant money won't always be there. That's the other thing. A lot of everything we've bought so far, we've had grant support. Ain't always going to be there.
Yeah, but it's meanwhile, maybe, and I have some similar information to you. I think that I share about the New York, New Jersey, Port Authority deals with the APMTs. I think that what reality was, APMT bought concessions. That kind of a signing bonus, huge signing bonus. Talking about the 700 million type of the signing bonus they pay to buy concessions on the extension. But Tiffany, you don't need to write down the note. Actually, it doesn't.
Here, double that one out.
So that is a more like a public information. So then sooner or later, the port authorities and here and then we will know, and also city will know this kind of fact. And then second thing is that port authorities and Serokan is very close to MSCs right now. Okay, so then MSC is approaching the New York, New Jersey, and also Los Angeles right now. And WBCTs, of course, actually they are first target. They need to have more asset. I think that any asset they want to buy. Okay, so then MSCs we've seen some MSCs activity so far. They are buying a bunch of assets, terminals, rail companies, and then ships, everything by cash, by money. So they are thinking actually that they can make a deal with anything by cash. So it's whatever the environment, whatever the commercial terms, and they don't mind paying the cash.
They'll pay it.
Right. So then maybe city and the port authority will be happy to have a cash. So and then I believe actually you have a good relationship with the city and then like port authorities, and then I don't think that we will fail, but it's better be careful. Better be careful. So then it's as Dave said, best way is that we need to conclude. Better to conclude everything before like expiry date. Is once we see the expiry, anything can happen. Like on the WCT case, actually, Yanmin case, Yanmin lost, their concession to MSC, right? MSC easy to steal, and then somehow by paying the cash, informed cash. So I think the most important is that we need to keep in concession right as YTS as OLE. So as current process is quite reasonable, quite logical, the movement. But again, these someone's doesn't care about the logical movement, logical the process. So it's then we are in the first runner, right? Then unfortunately, we may take some risk. Actually, is to conclude that as earlier time. And again, I think our risk is losing concession, right? So I don't know actually how much actually commercial terms, port authority offers and cities are looking for from us. But somehow it's better to settle down as quick as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit scary situation, right? Then that's better to keep close to Gene, and then and then to make sure actually they are ready to sign with us actually before closing expiry date. Yeah.
Understood, and good point that it's an aggressive market out there with shipping lines with a lot of cash. Like
And the ports are wanting their cut.
They want their cut.
Right?
They want their cut.
And they've seen all these terminals turn over and they've got nothing out of it. And if they see an opportunity and there's an opening, we just can't give them an opening.
Yeah, I think the points are well taken, and this is obviously priority we talked about before for me, and my top priority to get this done. And I think we can get the commercial language, which we need their red line back on that, which we told them that we would do 3 buckets: the environmental bucket, the non-commercial terms, commercial terms. So the environmental bucket's tracking along really nicely now. The non-commercial, we've traded 2 sets of. They gave us theirs. We redline. They just redlined our red line. So we're starting to get some traction on the non-commercial, and then we get into the commercial terms, and that's where it's going to be really interesting, because right now they have this priced at APMT kind of levels, right, for a facility of that. And I think that we've got a good, we think we got, but it's only so good until you get there. But we think we got a good storyline there, and we can make some improvement on that. But understood about the potential risks of what's if we go too far with it.
Yeah. But then that means that if you need to have some help, manpower and whatever, ask us.
I will do that.
We can send any resources and any help. And also actually, if you need to have hire small consulting company, actually, let's do it.
Okay.
To accelerate negotiations.
Okay.
So I think better to go one by one. Better to go, together. Commercial terms, non-commercial, better to discuss together. Yeah, it's another one by one.
Okay.
Then I think that you need to have resources more.
Okay.
So then let us know. And then also is and we don't mind hiring another consulting company.
What's that important? So understood. We appreciate that offer, and I think the next couple of weeks will be important to see how we got an internal meeting tomorrow. I got a meeting with Paula on Thursday. Lunch meeting, and I think it's for ourselves to get kind of aligned, and then shortly after that, I meet with Gene to make sure that we've got a good sight line here for the second half of the year to make some really good progress.
If I understand correctly, they already have an initial idea of what they're pricing us at?
Yeah, they already gave us a commercial proposal, a commercial offer. They gave us a full package probably a year and a half ago, and then we've given them something probably a year ago, and it's just taken.
Has that been passed on?
It has been, yes.
So the history of that, Tim, is that as Alan had pointed out, historically, you try to get this done way in advance. His target was, this summer, but when then they dropped this proposal on YTI that had all this new environmental language, all these new inclusions, all these new exclusions. It kind of blew up the timeline.
Yeah.
And so it had to split out the strategy to take these things on one at a time. And the biggest thing is that they lumped in YTI in the same bucket as APMT that has basically exponential growth opportunity with 18Ks and no restrictions, right? And a huge rail yard. And they're saying, you are the same as them when 14Ks are it, the rail yard is what it is, terminal's landlocked, it's not comparable.
You have limitations here, I understand that. Is there a side-by-side with what Mercator and what we think we should be going back with?
Yeah, so I'm gonna shift to that. So the first bucket is where we are with the port.
Thank you, Dave.
Internally, the activities there is that we retained Mercator, probably 6 months ago. And Mercator we've been working with Mercator to do a kind of a market analysis of where we should be. And a part of that has been a subcontract to Norse Appraisers, who is a real estate appraiser who actually used to do work for the port, because we've sat across from him before in my prior days at APMT when we got locked into a protracted 5-year reset. So the Mercator, we're retaining Mercator as our consultant, and Norse as a sub-consultant. So we're getting a market study with a real estate assessment. We've been working on that for the last 6 months, and we've been going back and forth with Mercator. They've done really good work, but I think Tara's done a great job of highlighting some things that maybe make a little bit more sense. We are probably within weeks of completing that because the Mercator part is basically done. And then the Norse, we've been working with Norse on getting a couple of his things addressed. And we felt like his approach on a couple things, we didn't understand it. And so we've got that corrected now, and we just got the last draft of the Norse report. So I'd say that within the next, and we've shared these with O&E, internal lease side, and I think we're probably within a couple of weeks of having that all finalized, and me now sharing the finalized report, which we're pulling data from that into our storyline document, which is what we're calling the document that we're going to present to the Port of LA when we have a formal meeting with Gene and our commissioners about our position on the financials. It's a kind of we call it the storyline document that shows our rationale for why we think the pricing should be what we think the pricing should be. So that document is coming along. That's an internal thing that y'all have not seen before, that we should have here shortly within probably the next month. So we're in May, middle of May, so the expectation is that in the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, the O&E team is going to be getting a lot more information from us to get your buyout, sign-off, questions, comments, concerns, before we start either going back on a red line to pull on something, or if we got to make sure that we've got everything cleared up on Mercator and Norse. You guys have already seen Mercator. I think we're pretty good there. And then really the big thing gets into the storyline document that we're going to present, which when we get that draft here in probably about another 2 weeks too.
And that's kind of like a cover letter to the Mercator report, because eventually that huge Mercator report will go to the commissioners, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have a storyline or a cover letter that's what, 2 or 3 pages.
It's about 15 pages.
It's about 15 pages.
It's 15 pages.
Okay.
Right now. Well, we've had debate over, do they see the Mercator report, or do we just refer to the Mercator report?
Right.
I think we can go either way. So right now, the storyline document, or the cover, as you call it, is about a 15-page document.
Okay.
But we had pulled pieces of Mercator
Got
into
it.
that.
Okay.
And I think keeping it as almost like an appendix almost.
Right. Okay. Originally, I thought we had talked about it being a little bit of a shorter storyline, but
Jumped around a little bit
there's
on that.
a lot.
We've got about 5 chapters in it. What I call chapters, 5 main storylines that drive where this thing is at.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So make some progress on it. I think I've covered everything that was in here. The last thing I'll tell you, we got 17, as of May 1st, we got 17 months. The second thing is that at the end of last board meeting, we had this dialogue about potentially the branding change of the terminals, YTI, representing ownership. didn't really, this was reflected in the minutes, so I didn't really talk about in that much detail, but it's my strong recommendation to the board that we keep the YTI name until we get a new lease. And the reason why is this, is that the amount of positive recognition, and this has happened in probably the last 2 to 3 years, the amount of positive recognition that we have gotten in the community with YTI, use and terminals, has been beyond what we expected. And I've mentioned this before, we have had harbor commissioners at meetings, and I've sat at tables where this has happened, where they have said, this is YTI, and let me tell you what they're doing on zero emissions. And harbor commissioners, and in my career, I've never experienced that before, to where we have harbor commissioners that know YTI. City Councilman McCosker, who would approve this lease at city council level, has made 3 visits here and has told us, and I think I mentioned this before, that I like what YTI is doing in the community. My problem is no one else is doing it. So when I meet with the other terminals, I'm telling them, I need you to do what YTI is doing. This is city councilman, I've never had that happen. And I know that he's done that because I've heard from some of these other terminals saying, kind of complaining at me, what are you doing? I'm not gonna tell you. So the moral of the story is this, is what we're doing from what YTI has been able to do in the community and things of that nature, which ACL touched on in some of his presentation, which we've touched on several presentations to the board. Man, we can't, we need that. So my recommendation is that, as important as the rebranding is, it's my strong recommendation that if we can hold off until we get a new lease, just because city council knows who YTI is, the commissioner will know who YTI is, and I just think we just got to use that. So we don't need a decision today, but just something that as we move forward.
And I think that's agreeable. What I would ask, though, is that you make sure with Tara that if there is a name change after, it doesn't reopen the lease, it doesn't change any terms of the lease. Because it's my understanding that if you want to change, there's no DBA that you can just amend to your lease. You have to open it back up and do an actual lease change and go through the whole thing with the port and the city council and all that. So just if there's language in there that kind of leaves a backdoor open to a DBA amendment.
Can we make that an action item for next board meeting to check that and make sure that that is not something we have a concern about?
It's a good point, and we're going to be visible to this to the poll. It's not something we're going to hide from them. Right. It's not something we'll hide and say, oh, by the way, and we're going to rebrand and call ourselves Magenta Terminals. We're going to tell them up front, guys. There's going to be rebranding.
There is a potential that the new owners want to rebrand. And we need to have some flexibility there, and that's, just make sure the language is in there that we're not gonna open up the whole lease again just to do a name change, and we're not gonna have to go through.
We'll kind of defeat the purpose, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, and it would be just like what happened when we went through the ownership change, right? I mean, we went through the port, and we had to go through the 3T and the city council and all that other stuff. This is just a simple rebrand.
Yep. Okay. We'll take that as action and make sure that we get that. If we don't, then we'll do it before.
Well, I mean, no, I don't want to. If it's possible to leave that open, and I think we all agree that you've got this goodwill equity going that allows you to continue with this momentum. And McCosker is a big voice right now.
He's a huge voice,
right? And he can in turn influence the commissioners and Gene in your quest to get this thing closed. I don't want to blunt that at all, but I do want to try to at least give us an opening to at some point rebrand.
Okay.
Suji-san's point of the existential threat of someone coming in and interfering with our concession is the most important thing, and so as you said, the equity that has been built cannot be squandered here in that regard, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's a good way to phrase it. The equity that we built and then the external threats, I think, are the two big ones. And on the equity we built, what the intent? The intent was just do the right thing in the community, right? So just do the right thing in the community, and then as time went on, we realized that, boy, it really got more attention than we ever thought it would, in a very positive way as a marine terminal operator in Port of LA. And it was just a natural progression, a very organic thing that happened for us. And then woke up one day and realized, you know what, we kind of need to use, we need that, we need to keep that. And that really resonated as we talked about it last time, about name
Different
change.
than the commercial side, reputation matters.
It's a big deal, yeah. All great points on the lease. Other questions, comments?
Yes. So you already received the consultant draft from Apoda.
We received a full,
Consultant.
yes, we did.
Draft, right? So,
Yeah, we have given them our red line to that.
Then roughly how much is just gap of expected?
It's big. I don't have the dollar figures off the top of it, but I was trying to see if I can get a dollar figure off the top of my head that would give a good comparison. But we look at two things. One is the MAG, and the second is the TU rates. And they are substantially, to me, there's a substantial gap between what they proposed to us and our counter proposal, even compared to what we do today. And I wish I could, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Oh, their annual escalations almost like makes the end of the lease unsustainable.
It does. I guess that's a good way to phrase it. That if you look at their starting point with what they project to be annual CPI, which is a new thing, in a manner of speaking, we could get about halfway through this lease term and be running a negative business return almost. It's pretty big, and they're going big. So there's going to be a lot there. And so I think back to your point, the sooner we get in that discussion, the better. So we can get more concurrent with the other things we're doing. That would be favorable
So
to
maybe
make sure we can figure out where we land there.
Once you get the Norris Mercator squared away, we can do the side by side.
Yep.
And get that up.
Oh, that's already done. We already did that.
We've got a lot of that now.
Yeah, early in our discussions, we did a side by side. You know, this is what they're asking. This is what YTI should come back with. So it's just unfortunate that, I mean, we've been looking at so many other things because that was just set aside because that was the purpose. We knew there was going to be some, you know, hard days ahead on the commercial side, but that's already done.
And can you please, can somebody make sure that you share that up to?
Yeah, we'll
Koyama-san?
resurrect it and get it out.
And, you know, copy myself since I.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, since she's
You know, we got some new folks with you know, Wade involved. Cause we started off with Ken and Scott and things of
Yeah.
that. Commerce on those guys. So maybe you want me to refresh, or are you going to refresh? It can come from-
We'll talk off.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Make sure I've got all this information. But we're gonna be adding some new stuff. We're gonna be adding new versions coming up here.
You recall. Yeah, I was gonna say,
I can remember the number.
right? It was.
Sorry.
One source of truth for everybody to be operating off of,
Yeah.
right?
Good update. And I'm doing the same with Sandra here, 'cause she's new and heavily involved in this too and stuff. So it'd be a good reset with all, we got some new players. Davey and I can talk offline and
I may be able to resurrect it while we're sitting here.
Okay.
I've got a folder of it, of the progress.
Any other questions or comments on the lease? Thank you. Direction from the board is clear. We're gonna shift over to operations, Eric Crichton.
Sorry, thank you for the good discussions on this. But I think one matter that we require approval today is on the FY25 budget. I think the business update is just basis and updates. So is it okay that we run through the FY25 budget first?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We come back to the business update later.
We got new,
Sorry,
Are you asking me? Or are you asking him?
Pass the clicker.
I was feeling it too,
So we
man.
got our-
I was feeling good.
So we got our appendix, I think, is that what we got?
Yeah, all the proposal,
Fiscal year 2025. Would you like, I mean, obviously everyone's looked at this already. Would you like to ask us questions? You want us to review each slide? What works best for you all, since I know everyone's looked at it?
I think we can really run through them if there's anything.
I'll quickly do it, and
Okay.
stop on the ones that are going to really move the conversation here. So obviously, just from a perspective of how did we arrive at the budget, we looked at our commercial needs for 2025, as well as our investment in talent, infrastructure, and technology, and took in took in consideration any kind of cost management that we can obviously apply, and then strategic funding of community programs and involvement, which goes to our branding and why we are hesitant to changing the name. With that being in mind, we did submit an original budget that suggested 45.1 million of EBITDA. The latest budget suggests 47.2. I'm not going to spend time here because those are obviously changes, and we are not approving the 45.1, we're approving the 47.2. Are there any questions on this slide?
I'd like to make one quick point. We had version, I think it was 2.0 is what was being circulated on your side. And that kind of came up at the last minute through a new version out there. And my apologies for that. But a couple things that happened as we were moving into April. And I felt like that we needed to take another stab at this thing. And that's why I came in and we said we're going to give you a budget version beforehand. So we typically don't do that. The version that's circulated is the one that you come back and tell us where we are. So I just threw a little bit of a curveball at everyone. My apologies for that, but it was all because of the situation going on at the time. Sorry to say.
No problem, and I'll touch some on all of these items through our assumptions for revenue and expense. So a full picture of the P&L, budgeted revenue-wise 423.3 million, direct expense 318.7, operating expense 65.1 million, other income or expense 1 million, profit loss before tax 38.5 million with a EBITDA of 47.2 million. Gross margin at 24.7% with 104.6 million. So see here the next page. Go ahead, sir.
Go on, It's just there's one that stands out based on an earlier conversation. Your other income expense of a loss of $1 billion seems kind of odd given we're talking about our cash-rich status and ability to leverage some of that money, even at today's, talking about a couple plus million plus on that side. Is there something that builds into that I'm missing?
What other items that roll into that are any kind of lease guarantee, which I'm not sure if we had in there or not, interest income, interest expense, and then any other gain or loss on fixed asset disposal. If there's anything that we planned on disposing of that could also potentially impact that. But I'll get us a breakdown of the actual budget of $1 million and how it goes up between interest income and interest expense.
That's like a
Yeah.
3 million. Let's say you even have $2 million in interest with some very basics on you retain 50, right? You have even a very modest interest receipt would throw that completely out of kilter. Change this by $3 million, potentially like $3 million. Push you right up to 50 right away. Right?
Definitely look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just step over that there.
On a key assumptions summary, we'll start with revenue. We are estimating vessel volume to be at 790K, rail volume at 183K lifts or 23.35 of vessel move. Rate increase as of July 1st allocated as per agreement with all lines, 40% CPI, 60% labor, which equals to 3.44 vessel plus rail throughput. Labor is actually 3.06. This is a keystroke error, 3.06 and not 3.60. CPI at 3.20, which translates into 2.16 and 1.28%. HAPEC Lloyd rates have been applied as of April 1st, which were successfully executed by our commercial team, HJ. AL5 service assumed at 5 vessel calls for the full year. We initially had 6. After a conversation with WJ and a few others, we reduced that to 5. We are still considering 5 vessel calls for the full year in the budget. Pier Pass assumes at 3.06 increase, which matches the PMA labor increase effective July 2025. Other revenue rate increases, they merge at 2.5%, all at CPI. Yard gate revenue 3.60, other ancillary revenue 3.44, and M&R at 3.44. M&R revenue projected to reflect 2024 trend. Lower revenue may result from further diminishment of pool of pools. Okay? Any questions on the revenue assumption? Okay?
Sorry,
Yes,
second.
go ahead.
Sorry.
AL5, so I have to tap into my old M&C hat here. AL5 is mostly moved over because of congestion at other terminals during the course of 2024 FY, right? Don't see the same dynamic occurring in this year, do we? I mean, there's a substantial delta if the AL5 isn't making those 5 calls. Do you think the AL5 is going to be forced to YTI during the course of the year?
So far, we've not seen any disruption except for the Europe. Lockdowns, Hamburg, very conscious. Some delays we've seen. So that may impact to the number of call YTI. But again, this is kind of say premature to assume just how much we've seen the AL5 call on the YTI now.
I just am a little concerned it's dangerous to count on that AL5 revenue.
AL5, as you know, is basically going to drop out this year. It's not right yet. It's
So,
service.
trade package service, the thought was, it's like, if I remember, the thought was that, you know, is, that I think that the market, everyone, before the tariff thing started, the market would be another strong market this year, and then therefore we built in some AL5s due to maybe some potential trade pack congestion. And I think, Tim, your point now is that, okay, the world's changed probably, and we might not see that congestion. The second thing I'll say is that there's also some discussion about, okay, if the tariff thing works itself out, there could be a huge flood of cargo coming, which could bring the congestion thing back again, and we might see an AL5.
We're expecting a hockey stick.
Yeah,
From
so
a commercial
I think
standpoint,
the other way to
at some
look at
point, the hockey stick will kick in.
I think the other way to look at this though is that if the AL5, you know, is left in there, it provides, you know, HJ's done a great job over the last couple of years of securing third-party business out of nowhere, out of thin air. And right now they've removed everything out of the budget except for April's already completed extra loader. The budgeted volume that you've got in there is, what is it, 12K moves? For, no, AO5,
10.
10,000. Pretty small number. You land 2 extra loaders, you've already made that up. So the potential of having 2 extra loaders over the next 12 months perhaps is equal to or greater than any AO5s coming in. So I don't want to say you've got fluff built in, but to pull the AO5 out,
Do you think that the fluff is okay based on the AL5?
for that amount of volume, I don't, like I said, HJ manages to find lifts out of nowhere, I swear.
But
you know?
if you don't have an AL5, we'll find out to fill up the gap, yes. Yes, I'm watching it, that's correct.
Right.
I mean, that's just my position on it. I mean, Suji-san, Koyama-san, you think any different than that? I mean, I don't know that 10,000 is such a. What's that,
Do you
Tim?
want to call it what it is? It's not actually AL5, it's actually.
Well, okay, I mean, certainly we can put 10,000 back into the extra loader bucket and pull the AL5 out, but I think it's just semantics at this point. We're saying there's going to be 10 or 12,000 extra moves in the throughput budget.
I understand, but when expectations are set clearly, it's easier to understand where you do and don't hit them. Expecting the AL5 to come back is probably the pipe dream, right? Whereas if we do call it extra loader volume, no offense to Miracle Guy down at the end of the table here,
Definitely puts the onus on him to make it materialize.
he has to make some things materialize.
Instead of looking to us to shift one over
Right,
out of.
why I didn't get the L5, it's your fault. but-
Yeah, he just texted me that. He goes, Alan, keep that L5, keep that L5. I think, you know, it's a good point, and I think that, you know, we might shift a little bit, because typically it might shift our costs a little bit. I don't know, because the L5 is a little bit more of a different animal for us, but I'm okay either way, but I think that the feeling is that the L5 is really gonna be a pipe dream, that I'd be more comfortable showing you the next loader.
I'd be happy to be wrong.
Okay?
That's the smell of it.
Yeah, it sure feels that way, right?
And HJ and I discussed this lightly because we did not know what was actually going to take place from AL5. So if there are no objections, we can definitely change it to extra loads.
We can go with it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, HJ.
No problem.
Get to work.
How many voice lanes incorporated into that system? Transmissions. AP1 and
Yes, we do have the, I have to have the exact number.
I have it from a, which
44,
one are you
right?
asking?
AP7 and AP8.
FP146 voyages. Is that the number you're
Yeah,
looking for?
FP146 and A545.
45.
Yes,
voice
AP1
lane
is
and
45.
Oh yeah, AP1 45.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then
We have it
AP7.
here.
This one, yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
FP146 and AP145.
45.
Marex, we didn't count on any blank void. We got from the common sergeant at the beginning of the budget process.
Already, you know, AP1 and AP1, 3 voice savings already happened.
Well, it's a-
In
Fiscal year 25, starting from April. April, yeah. April,
yeah,
So we got two.
voice savings happened, you know, until maybe possible end of possible. Then
End of
most likely, yeah, maybe most likely you may have more voice savings.
Okay.
But yeah, just business plan, that's not, but in reality,
Yeah, I do know that AP1 and we also have a void, blank voids because of the China market is
Yeah.
out. But as we talked that, are we going to apply that one? Is it
no,
more blank
just
or?
maybe, you know, potentially.
Yes.
Actual and the budget gap should be bigger.
Yeah, okay.
More voice savings, I think we should say.
Yes. Also, the later this year, also we may have a big volume from the Asia to fill up the gap that we may have in the first half of this year. Yeah, so we talk about that and then decide to keep it as it
No
is.
need to change. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
just-
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Just to make sure that we have it clear to do, we will remove, exactly, and make it an extra loader. Is everybody in agreement?
Yeah, and
Okay.
we'll go extra loader. We've already had one extra loader
Yes,
call.
mhm.
And then we'll get the 805 volumes. We may have to adjust, given the different cargo mix
Okay.
on cost, but I'll leave that there to you guys to figure that out. And we'll show we'll show 6 extra loaders, I guess, probably we'll show or something of that nature.
Got it.
And then one heavy yard.
Yeah, and also this is a kind of business plans, okay? So in tariff situations, nobody knows what will happen
Yeah.
in the future, right? So once we set that this is the business plans, better to monitor more carefully. Maybe you may see some blank voyage because of the tariff issue. So the people keep some remark, actually, how many like a voyage you lost, and then due to the tariff issue, right? Then maybe I don't know how long this kind of situation will go on.
Yeah.
But it's better to keep actually like monitoring how much impact you got because of like a tariff compared to the business plans. So because of business plans, you already put some assumptions over there, but then compared to that assumptions, reality is what is the difference between your assumption and realities. That will be better to monitor actually.
Okay. Let's go back here. From an expense perspective, labor rate increase effective as July at 3.06. Gross margin per hour at 28.7 average full year. Casual labor utilization at 3.5%, includes 5 no-work holidays, and 30 additional gate closures. This is one of the items that we took a little bit of a different spin from our 2024 versus 2025 budget perspective. We looked at our actual historical data and married it with what we potentially think that we can arrive at. Wharfage assumed at 2.5 increase matches POLA CPI increase. Just want to make sure that's understood. It's not a general CPI applied across the board, which is a different CPI. Effective as of 7/1. YTI North includes half-year land and labor costs, including 6A. Fixed rent for YTI East and New Dock Street includes 2.4 increase effective January of 2025, and then another one at 2% effective January of 2026. Inflation, which is general inflation, 3.2% applied across the board where applicable. Wages and benefits overall increased by 6% from November year-to-date run rate. The reason why November is mentioned here is because when the initial budget was prepared, those were the numbers that the team looked at. Merit average increase at 3.5% with a 3 new headcount. Terminal use chassis budget per current agreement. Additional costs may result from the pending pool structure changes, which we're still trying to get more educated as we get closer to those dates. Mechanics labor budgeted to reflect 2024 trend. Additional cost savings may result from further diminishment of pool, but obviously the revenue aspect of that is going to be negatively impacted as well. So hopefully the expense side is more than the loss of the revenue. Any questions on the expense assumptions for fiscal year 2025 budget?
No, but I did have one more question.
Sure.
And Dave and I talked about this.
I don't disagree with them all, so I'm gonna use my data this time to support my K-State, so you can beat me tomorrow. The rail moves, you saw that you're looking at going from 28% to 23, right?
Yes.
Generally speaking. I was trying to get my data up real quick here, but I'm a little short, but I'm not that short. I know primarily your FP1, PS7 is a giant chunk of the overall log running through you, right? Other than cool and some others, that's your big number. The IPI volume that I'm showing on there averages almost like 37, 38%, right? And I know that we, as of 6 weeks ago, I was still in charge of the execution marketing side. We were trying to bring the IPI ratio down. But the reality was that will only be semi-successful. So we'll probably drop a couple percentage points from that 38%, but it's not gonna be really significant. We'll probably drop to 35, we might lose 2 or 3% probably. Where we'll see is drops elsewhere, that's besides the point. So I'm a little, on the positive side, I think your rail moves will be a little higher than you are projecting. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know how much you balanced in here. I know Dave and we talked about some of the extra loaders were very IPI heavy.
They were.
They probably brought in, but the extra loaders made up really significant amount of volume.
They made up a lot of IPI. Yeah.
But they're still small numbers compared to FP1, PS7 running through
Yeah.
every week, right? So I don't know how hard you hit the numbers or how much one and yourselves collaborated on what the numbers should be, right? I'm pretty sure I can get you somebody to talk to you about better numbers so that you can more accurately forecast this. So you can build up a little bit here.
We'll talk to anyone that can give us more accurate numbers.
I know you will.
So what did you use for
We're
your?
open to that.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Okay, let me elaborate this. So obviously we use historical data. Only factors we apply is the FP1, the AP1, which is PS7, used to bring 800 to 700 weighted cargo from Shanghai Ningbo, but starting April they dropped the Shanghai Ningbo, which is the main source.
Oh, right.
That a significant drop. So we already look at the rail volume from PS7 has been dropped significantly starting April, that we factor into our budget.
So the FP1, your percentage, did you use 37 or 38%?
No, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, FP1.
PS7.
Yeah, but for the FP1, you used,
The same number, the historical number we
yeah,
got in the
and
past.
you just shrunk the
Yes.
PS7 volume.
We only touched the PS7.
Got it.
Because the major change was the drop Shanghai Ningbo, which is the
Yep.
main source of the rail that is significant enough, like for example,
Got
one
it.
line
Okay.
got 100 per vessel, they got only 5.
Yeah, so you're way back down to where it was at the very beginning, right?
Yes,
Virtually
so
no
we reflect
IPI.
that number.
And you factored in no third-party extra loader or IPI?
No.
Okay.
And then rail, the retro, when we have extra loaders, we don't look for extra loader with a heavy rail.
Right.
They create the conflict.
But they come.
We only pursue the extra loader with a heavy rail with O&E, because normally those extra loader is a replacement of FP on blank voyage.
Okay.
That we take that. We took a few extra loader of O&E, which actually is a replacement of a relief
Yeah.
vessel for FP1 last.
Okay. No, that's understandable. The logic, you know, that AP1 that first started had no IPI, then they grew it, and then they omitted those ports. So you're back to only IPI off the FP1.
You have 6,700 Ts heading your way, sailings a week 20 from O&E just itself. Just to put that out there. So I understand your point. Logic was good. The reality, though, is the sourcing shifts we're seeing the customers doing still have to get to the places that they normally go to. So even if though China is down, if it's coming out of Vietnam or India or where the heck ever it's coming from now, it's still got to get to Chicago and Memphis and Atlanta and Dallas and all those other wonderful places. So the origin might have changed. And actually, the FP1 will always be heavy IPI, Japanese cargo always is. But the PS7 on high side, who's much more port to port than we are, right? It's one. I remember which hat I'm putting on and taking off. One tends to, will probably continue to see a fairly high IPI ratio to some degree. It will come down, but I'm just thinking we're overplaying this. I don't want to belabor this too much, but I also want you guys to be, you know, pretty much on the top. Under-promising and over-delivering is a wonderful thing,
Yeah.
but you're taking a pretty heavy hit on your PL going from one year to the next. I'm trying to make sure that we're somewhere in the neighborhood, right? Right?
So takeaway, go back and revisit the radios. Is that a takeaway? Or?
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
The relative percent that we have of total count might be too drastic of a cut from year to year.
You're not taking into effect that hockey stick. You're thinking of today, very recency bias will fall into that. What's stinky today is gonna be stinky tomorrow, and I don't know how long it's gonna be stinky, because eventually there will have to be replenishment,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. The next page was, in fact, the operating KPIs, which we just touched on. Vessels are going from 173 to 183. Vessel moves are dropping from 827K to 790K. That's a 10% drop. And as discussed, really dropping as well, down by 21%. Vessel productivity from prior year 27.35, improving to 28.07.
Eddie, that's a conservative target.
Huh?
That's a conservative target.
Conservative?
Yeah.
We think we can hit it.
28.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think.
You set the table, you did 800,000 and 62 million EBITDA, so now you've got a new target, so hit that one too.
Yes, sir. Understood.
You didn't come across very strong
Taking credit for all of those good numbers,
You
man.
come
So-
across very strong. A little soft on that one, man.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, you know, that's I mean, it's a 28. That's a good number. It's a 24. Actually, it's a very amazing, operations, and like experience. Then this year 21st, it's not so much different, right, operationally. Is it what is the kind of say like a concerns, and then to put on a lower target for the productivity actually?
For me, it's the lack of schedule integrity, forcing all the ships to show up off pro forma. Although the volumes dropped, the conditions in which we're working create a lot of challenges out there to get from A to B in our yard. And so although you're seeing a volume increase and you divide it by 52 weeks, you think, well, it's going to be a lot of, it's for example, this week we got 8,000 lifts. 2 weeks ago we had 20,000 lifts. So that 20,000 lifts very tough to navigate in just because of schedule integrity. So I'm clear that it looks like schedule integrity is going to be a very big focus for the lines this year. So if ships can allow us to turn over our yard quickly, and we will work hard to improve our planning, we could surpass that. But I think if the conditions maintain like we saw this past year, where it's all at once, then a little bit of a relief, then all at once, I think we're going to continue to have some challenges.
Hard question, but I think it's relevant for a lot of different conversations, not just you guys. Do you know what the effect on your profitability is with 1 move per hour? So if you are 28 versus 27, you know what that means. Weekly, yearly, I'll take anything for weekly.
I've traditionally used $1 million a year.
$1 million.
That's what I've used traditionally, but I don't know if that's still the case. I mean, I think that could swing by several $100,000 depending on kind of terminal condition overall.
Average $1 million.
But it's, yeah, I'd say that's probably not bad.
So every move per hour is $5 million.
You have a different number, Eric?
I'm phoning a friend and I'll have it before I get to dinner. We've reviewed it, I just can't remember. I don't want to mislead you.
Susan's not going to want to hear this part, or is Korean, to be honest, but we're trying to look in at the cost of our vessels not moving on time. Okay? It's important to know the number. Even if we can't change the number, it's important to know the number, and then what can we do about it, right? If there are different actions you can take. I know it affects our export storage quite a bit. I've started getting some team members together to say, okay, this bucket, your bucket counts.
Yes.
How much do those vessels not being on time, how, I may come back, one may come back and ask you this question separately. Tim's not, I'm just asking you the gross number because you're old.
Good question. I think, I've refreshed that number about every 3 to 5 years in my career of looking at it. If we're talking mainliner services, which is the bulk of what we do, the core carriage is enough on the scheme of vessels and marks is in there a little bit. But if you look at mainliner, a move per hour on a mainliner, they give vessel $1 million a year.
Thank you.
You might come to dinner with some new generation type stuff here. We'll see.
Yeah, but then it's in general actually, budget is budget business plans, and then better to be a challenge. Okay, so then it's as we've seen actually, what we want is an improvement, and the betterment every year, right? But then could be this year's might be tough. So we may not say actually it's an increase in the target, but at least actually like maintain target. I mean, especially productivity, operation productivities. Yeah, I think that this is a kind of an effort of a team, persons. I think that you as an effort can be manageable, right? So then I think that we can say yes, and we can agree to reducing target. I mean, and compared to the last year performance, it's difficult to say yes, right? I mean, that's if we agree, I mean, it's next year also agree to reducing that's a challenge actually. That's actually for us, I mean, for a shareholder point of view, very tough to say yes. I mean, to this kind of target. So I mean, at least actually maintain last year performance target. I mean, this performance, please, like a 28 type of target we want to see. Because that is a big drop actually, target. I mean, productivity from 28 to lower 27. Yeah, I think it's it's logically it can be difficult actually. I know actually it's so many different actually.
Suji-san, 37.35 is
Last year.
last year.
Okay, so this year is maybe.
Yeah, this year,
Okay.
Eric Steams.
Okay. That's an upside.
So I was getting ready to sign an agreement with you.
Yeah.
That
So then
we should be doing 28.
Yeah, that's because of first step. My main target is EBITDA.
Yeah.
EBITDA. That's the 47 is sounds too. I mean, conservative. Yeah. So then, we want to see some more high numbers because achievement of 62 million is quite big achievement here this year. So then, we want to see a same target, but I know actually maybe volumes may not be then expected as this year. So volume will drop, rail movement may be drop, but again, it's some drop we can accept. But like 15 million drop, compared to the last year's.
I think your point's good. We looked, we looked at this real hard, and we did this, we really looked at, okay, we came in at $62 million EBITDA, and our volume drop, our vessel volume drop for 2025 was around 4%. Our rail volume drop was about 22 or 24%, right? And the EBITDA drop is 27%. That's right.
Close to 30.
Almost
24%.
24%. 24, yeah. So we got a 24% drop in EBITDA on 24% drop in EBITDA on a 4% drop in vessel volume, which is
Right.
really a key driver.
Right.
And the 27, in a 20, I think 22 or 24% drop in rail volume. And we've been going at, we've looked at this a lot of different ways to say, why are we not breaking 50 million?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of been what
Well,
we've
if you
looked
just
at.
apply the 4% drop, take out the 3.3
Yeah.
CMA and a couple of the other
Yeah.
ancillary contributions,
Yeah.
4% less than
Yeah.
that final number of 59 or 58 million isn't 47.
Yeah.
It should be in the 50s.
It should be in the 50s. And we look at, and we included in here the chart that shows that gap between the 60 and the 47. So we could understand it, right? You can look up there in the data touches and, we picked up, some pretty good chunks here on CMA, which is a one-off thing, and some other things in there. We have put a lot of time and energy into this because we agree with you that we should be, with a strong, almost 800,000 list, we should be at 50 million. And when we've been going through this and we landed where we landed at 47. The 28, I like the 28 moves an hour productivity. Before we were at 27. Wagen played a little hardball with us and bumped us up over 28, and I think that was fair. And I think Eric's comments are fair also, but we should be, with I think what we have here, we got two great big mainliners, a couple of smaller ships in there that don't really impact the productivity that much, but we should be a 28 per move an hour gross move per hour facility. And if we've got strong volumes of 750, knocking on the door 800,000, we should be at 50 million. So we've gone through this, we land at the 40, whatever this latest version is. But I understand the concern to approve something of this nature. If we're told to go back to drawing board, we'll go back to drawing board, and we'll keep pushing on this thing to figure out what we're missing. We understand that.
Yeah, this one's, understand, it's all negative impact.
Yeah.
You counted.
Yeah.
But you didn't count the, increasement point. I mean, incremental. The positive actually, influence. I think that we should have some positive actually, factors. I mean, it's like a cost saving and some kind of productivity increasing.
Yeah.
Some should have some positive actually, factors, over there. But then overall actually, 27, 24%. That's
24. The answer.
yeah.
24 drop in the,
Yeah, it's maybe too much.
on a 4% drop in vessel volume.
Yeah.
All right, just so we don't spin wheels here.
So the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer sounds like it.
Yeah.
My boss is saying that, our chairman is saying that.
Just to give them an expectation, I mean, what is your idea of a minimum threshold, Suji-san? You're sending them back to the drawing board. Don't come back with less than this.
If I may say 55. So, but it's 55 could be a high numbers.
you gotta say a number, so you said a number. That's a little high number, but I like it too. I mean, obviously, we all wanna see 55, right? I agree with that. Give them a target, and it's a stretch goal, and see what we can do. And what do you need to achieve it? Right, that's the other question. Do you need something to achieve that?
Fair question.
What is it?
Yeah, fair question.
That's why you have a board, that's why you have, other stakeholders.
Yeah, someone get another 2 or 3 million from interest from the bank.
From where?
Yeah, from bank.
Okay.
Well, for 90 days actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a, I mean, it's a seriously, it's a.
Yeah, we would take it too, right?
Right,
If we could
right.
get it, lower interest, if we can get it, we'll get it.
Yeah, better to get some kind of say, high target for it.
Yeah.
Then that will be a challenge. Maybe I don't mind 53 and 54, but it's more than 50 please. Yes, more than 50 please.
More than 53.
Article 50.
Yes, I can't argue that. I mean, I think that.
You put a clear expectation out there, thank you. I do not disagree.
Everything my fault actually. Everything is
Well,
Being in the big chair is hard sometimes, that's what you said.
the good news, we handle rejection well. We handle rejection well, and we're pretty good at coming back on things and figuring out what's next for us. So, the message is clear, and don't disagree with it, and we'll come back with something better than 47.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, very clear on that.
And just to make sure that I walk away with full understanding, since this is my first go-around, we are closing April, so when we now submit the new updated budget, does the new updated budget have actuals for April?
Good question.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like you said, yes.
Always include the
Always.
extra as a part of budget. If you, yes, we did it.
So we're on version 4, so we'll give you version 5.
Yeah.
And version 5 budget will reflect April actual with 11-month budget for a 12-month,
Yeah.
obviously, the return result, okay?
Then, but again, it's a fairly speaking, it's better to count some kind of impact from a tariff. Okay, so then, what voyage you lost, kind of things, maybe you can monitor, then we can fairly evaluate actually, real performance of what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, today is Tuesday. Feels like it's Friday already. Actually, when I walked in today, when I walked in, it felt like Tuesday. By the time I walk out here, it's gonna feel like Friday.
We usually have board meetings on Thursdays,
Yeah.
so
Well, I'm used-
it's advancing
Yeah.
a week.
I'm used to
like
the
this.
morning one where I'm fresh, right? You guys, we flipped on us today. We got the afternoon session. We'll come back next week.
Sure.
We'll come back next week based on what the calendar is for this week. We'll come back next week with a new proposal to the board.
Thank you.
And,
We'll be together in
Wait, Jim, we'll
Singapore.
we'll take it through you, obviously,
So they come back next Friday.
for circulation.
We can have a quick conversation.
So we are done with budget, so shall we go back to?
Yeah, you guys got to keep going. We've got 2 more sections left. We've got operations, and then we've got the commercial, which I think will be fairly short and quick. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay, now we're gonna pass the baton.
So before we start, the new generation reports into me has us at 50K a week, roughly. Looking at around 2.5 million for the year, one move per hour.
2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine with all the new labor numbers and everything else.
That's on 800,000 moves.
Yeah, the new gen has a different number. That happens to me all the time.
Is that one? I think I passed my expiration date.
Make an assumption on something and tell one of my guys that like, Tim, you're talking about 2010. $2.5 million per move.
Oh,
That's a big number.
Based on the same number, same handling volume, right?
Okay. You're bald.
Something tells me this conversation is going to keep going. I can tell. We'll talk offline. Yeah. I've learned in the new generation to keep questioning numbers because
sometimes we find errors.
Send some errors. Yeah,
Anyway,
find some
we'll
errors.
cover that.
Double check everything.
But anyway, we'll cover that offline.
Yeah.
Release information too soon.
Yeah.
All right, sliding into operations from last year. So the highlights, our takeaways to outline them for the full year. Achieved our cost per lift target, totaling a combined $7 million across all departments. As Alan mentioned briefly, highest vessel volume in the history of YTI at 827. Second highest, 782 back in fiscal year 2018 pre-pandemic. Second highest rail volume in YTI history, 233 versus 238 back in 2011. Turn time improved 8.4% year over year. So in 2023, we finished at 71 minutes. And this past year, we were at 65. So a lot of good work from our CI team, some improved planning, and fantastic result that we'll continue to build off of. There was some dialogue, Saiki, earlier. I think we're all in copy, too, around this New Year's target with the implementation of some RTG technology. Good thing is we're still going to come in better than we were just a year and a half ago. So still seeing improvement while we're implementing some safety measures and cost reductions. We haven't talked much about this, but successfully implemented our appointment system. And from our perspective, no impact to our service levels. So full rollout, really good teamwork amongst customer service, operations, our trucking community, all our customers, and it went off really, really well. A lot of positive feedback. Customer seems very pleased. Our continuous improvement initiatives, a couple years into this, they contribute over 1.3 million realized cost savings across all core operations. So really pleased, and I got a supporting slide here to go through some of that. And then last but not least, on the personnel side, we successfully onboarded 7 new members to the ops team. So 6 frontline managers were onboarded. They went through a very robust training program we have here. They've all passed, and they are in operations, starting to add value for us. Along with a new director of ops that we pulled, Tim from another terminal to help drive the operation here. So very pleased with that.
Well, yeah, congratulations. It's a high volumes, high performance in the last year. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Business.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the chefs.
So to break down some detail here from a cost per lift standpoint, you can see both the vessel and yard came in under target. The rail was over, as well as the guarantee. So just a couple of things I want to point out. On the vessel side, $3.4 million in savings on direct variable labor spend. So this is just situational management. We did have some labor categories that we were able to remove versus what we thought we were going to have to deploy. For example, bad order cones. There's this new position called a coneman that you're seeing harbor-wide. We order it situationally. We thought we'd have to order some more. There were some good the cones that came through YTI were in better condition than we had anticipated, so obviously we didn't order that labor. Another example, 13th hour that came out of this last contract for the clerks and planners. There's been some poor practice where people were paying it. We were able to hold off on some of that and save some money there. We thought we were going to have to pay it. And then one more example is, as the rail, we had some backlogs, which we'll get through in a few slides to show you the story for the year. That instead of trying to sort it in a congested yard, we actually saved on the tops and clerks, rough piled off the vessel, and sorted it on the rail side. So we were able to save some direct manning there in an already congested yard. Mm-hmm. So we found some efficiencies through the inefficiencies, if that makes sense, on what made sense for the conditions of a yard at the time. So very pleased with the result there. Yard and gate, Sandra already touched on this. Heavy gate closures. The team's done a very good job communicating internally, looking for every opportunity to save while maintaining service levels. That allowed us to save a lot of money there. Situationally activating our north yard. first half of the year we were, out of that area for a bit. We had to turn it on and use it for empty storage towards the latter half. But that situational management really adds up over the course of a year with direct labor savings. And then overall, when you get this much volume versus a budget, there's a fixed cost for some of our labor that gets amortized over the volume, which we didn't increase, obviously. For example, our yard planners, same head count, increased moves, saving a lot on a cost per lift standpoint. The rail, a little bit of a different story. I like to say we spent money to make money. Obviously, we used 6A and had to pitch and double handle some of the cargo, so a little bit of inefficiencies on the rail. Passed a lot of through a lot of that cost. Ended up making $12 million in revenue for the increase in volume, and recouped our pitch and catch cost in revenue by charging it back to the lines with our 6A usage. Okay.
Move the slide.
Oh, thank you. And then last but not least, guarantee. So we admittedly didn't budget this as we thought. We found some gaps about mid-year. We had increased it by about 12% year over year, but found some gaps. Since then, CI's put a tool together that allows us to budget more effectively and also manage the guarantee. What this is, Tim, is certain labor categories are guaranteed a certain pay. When volume drops, when we cut gates, when we have a week, for example, like this week where it's 8,000 versus a budget of 16, we still have to pay a certain labor category. So what we do naturally is we look to see how much we're going to save on a gate. What's our guarantee exposure? It's always going to save us money to cut a gate, but we do take the hit there, right? Overall for the business, it makes sense though. Yep. We're very confident in what we've got out there for 2025 and should come in under target for this year.
So that unit cost, so you're talking about new budget. Is a new budget based on the 24 budget number or based on the actual performance on 24 for the 25th budget?
For a guarantee?
No, it's a unit cost. Vessel, yard, actually rail, actually they have numbers, right? It's a per unit cost, per lift cost.
Yep.
Then for the new budget, did you use for the actual performance number or previous budget numbers?
We go off. It's a bit of both. So we don't use previous target. We budget based off the schedule, the pro forma provided by when the vessel's going to call. And then we tie in our labor for whatever shifts it's supposed to work, because that shifts the shift differential, weekend versus nights versus days, because it's a different wage. At the same time, we implement the practices that we actually performed with in 2024 and tie those in. So it's run rate tied with what is provided as far as a pro forma. Make sense?
Yeah. Another thing too is the casual percent, which is a big driver, especially on the vessel.
Yeah.
Is that if you think it's going to be a busy year, then there'll be a higher casual percent. And if it's not less, and that's a big driver. Because typically we've been budgeting under normal conditions 2%.
Yeah.
Casual, we end up like 6 or 8%. I think what was it? You got it right here. What was it like this?
3% is what we included in the fiscal year 25 budget, just from a cash flow.
I see.
Yeah.
That's 3%. You got the old assumptions.
Yes.
Yes. Right, thank you.
All right, moving on. So some KPIs. Dave already touched on this, but obviously my team's out there driving safe behaviors with our LW labor. So 0.99 versus the goal of 1.0. We talked through some of our misses, but I am pleased with the LTIR, and we've got our work cut out for this year to improve on the severity standpoint. Vessel volume we talked through. Production.
Eric?
Oh.
Sorry. Where were you? I apologize, I have to follow. Very.
Oh, excuse
This
me.
is 37, the other one was 38. So you covered 38 first. then you
Oh, okay.
covered 37.
Yeah, sorry guys.
All right.
There's the delay of game. I'm off my game here.
Well, it's funny, you talked about rail volume before, so I was going down the sheet anyway. I was like,
Keep going.
Okay. The one thing I want to highlight here is our RTG productivity was really solid. I'm very pleased with the team's work there. Good planning. We've come a long way in the last couple of years as far as how we're ordering with purpose, and that's been a good partnership between our CI and our operations team. Same thing with the turn time that I touched on earlier. 65 versus 70 is very good for result versus target. All right, here we go, back on track. So this was the basically the glance back for the full 12 months. So you've got your dwell charts here. You can see the colors for cargo type. You saw UP rail backlog come middle of May into August. That's when we started to see a climb in our yard and a lot of inefficiencies and congestion in our main CY. At the same time, come September time, our empties started to increase where they needed a home. So we activated both our 6A across the rail tracks here as well as the YTI North and started storing empties over there as well as the rail product over at our 6A facility. Coming into December, there's a lot of dialogue with ONE and the other shipping lines, and we talked about giving 6A back. We got out of there fairly quickly and shifted back into main CY and sorting it ourselves. At the same time, you see that the dwell starts to drop from as high as 9.4 back down where it's kind of leveled out in that mid 5 day range where it continues to stand. So we're back to somewhat normal operating conditions aside from the empty surplus we're seeing right now, and we do have North actively open. Store with both One High and ONE containers over there. Next slide. This highlights basically the return on the POLA incentive. So we weren't sure if we'd recoup the money that we based off last year's result, 2023 fiscal, but we continued to drive the result with the help of CI. So the green bar shows basically how we performed versus the year-over-year targets. We'll continue to compete against ourselves in fiscal 25. So typically we don't budget this, but we received over $500,000 in revenue this past year. So we hope to see something this next year. So CI. Two I want to highlight is the flip line efficiency and our RTG efficiency. So both rolled over, finished towards the end of fiscal 23, but we really were able to create some synergy for the full fiscal year 24. The flip line was an identification of how are we deploying our labor predominantly at night. What's the volume? Can we adjust our orders? Can we dual purpose some of the machines out there to both receive empties and slide over and do a flip when the business is there? The team did a fantastic job, especially second half of the year. As we saw some of that ancillary business shift a bit with the PS7 reality, we were able to collapse that unit at times on nights and return just shy of $600,000 in direct labor savings. The RTG efficiency is basically, we're the only terminal that I know of in LA Long Beach that has adjusted our grace period. So what that means is typically it's a 2-hour window, 1-hour appointment, 30-minute grace on each side. We've shifted that into a 90-minute period, and then allows for less overlap, appointment hour over appointment hour, which what we learned was at some periods we had too many truckers in our yard that we could physically turn over any type of efficiency. So by shifting 30 minutes, it allowed us to basically bring in what the transtainers could physically turn out with a good turn time, which I think the trucking community has been pleased with, we're very pleased with, and we've been able to save a lot of money doing so.
Just on that score, I don't want to approach this out, you know, a great job moving this along here with important information. From what I think you do, you guys have a bad actor list, people who don't show up for appointments. And your trucker outreach and your community outreach is so good that I'm afraid to ask this question because you're probably acting on it already, capacities I could imagine. But who are the bad guys, right? That's something that should be addressed. It's hurting your productivity, right? Who's creating appointments that aren't showing up? Is that something you measure? And
We have it. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly which truckers, but we do track the lower offenders.
Yeah, I can go with that. So, we do have internal data that since we have a new appointment system implemented in December, and then we have our own record that we communicate. When we have an inquiry from the special shipping line with the BCO that has an issue, we always ask Scarecrow to check in and share the information. But it's more like a reactive because coming into late May that we developed automated reports that we basically share the truckers' performance, the import, export, empty appointment with the automated report on a weekly basis. The shipping line will see that so that their sales and marketing have a educate conversation with their shippers and BCO because especially after OSLA 2022 that shipping lines are dealing with a lot of inquiry from BCO truckers about the demortgage and detention, that their performance of appointment is really good ammunition to deal with. So I already have a conversation with the shipping line to outline that automated report will be in place, I think late May, and most likely first in June that they will fully play the auto shipping line will receive via standardized form, and it's coming up to shipping line whether they upload the information into the history and find demortgage for import and also empty appointment for detention dispute. Yes, that's already in place.
thank you. Let me revisit you with that. We're, it's a way that we can help your efficiency.
Yeah. Overall, to sum this up, I'm very pleased. We're, I think, 3 years into the CI department, and I think the returns are well on their way to continue to improve the bottom line and just improve processes within our walls here. So excited for 2025.
So that's kind of say CI is continues for the 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's because that's remark is a completed. But is a completed means actually still. I mean, as a business as usual, you keep doing actually this
Sustainable.
sustainable.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so from a completed matrix here, they've completed their project. It's now in the control phase. It's implemented into our operations, and we'll sustain it moving forward.
Daily operation
Yes,
basis.
sir.
It's built into the next year's budget.
Yes, sir.
So we're capturing it in the following year's budget, continue that savings.
So
For
then
efficiency,
also,
how much like that.
right. Then also maybe you may start new initiatives for the 25th.
Yep. Yep. So this is a lot of transformative year, as Alan's called it. From an operations standpoint, we have tracked, some of the key, we call them records, really. It's getting to the point now where the team's starting to break records.
Eric, let's all show them this vessel with the gang records of 36 moves an hour, 36 and 32.
Yeah.
You might want to skip over that.
Yeah. That's a shift. That,
Why are we doing this?
so those records resulted in 27.35.
For the ship, right?
Yeah. But it's healthy. The team competes with each other. It's all in good nature. We shift our OMs from department to department. We share these with the teams, and they're always trying to compete with themselves on, they know what the records are, can they beat it, which I think is healthy in nature. But as you can see, in all departments, we've hit some milestones. Obviously, with record vessel throughput, comes, if we manage it properly, plan it properly, you're going to have grounded delivery at 78.39 back in July. Total weekly gate moves at 16,940. So these are all very transformative for YTI and figures that we haven't traditionally seen here. So very pleased with it. You can look through them. But some good things happening here, and we're not done yet. So to your point, Susan, I hear you. You know, we want to be at 30. 30 is a number around the harbor. It doesn't mean we don't strive for it if it's not our target. We're always competing on that and trying to improve our planning and execution on the business. Shifting gears a little bit. So we've had several projects and operations. It's a team effort. But the On-Dock Rail Tri-Party Task Force. So this was kicked off back in December of 24. The purpose of this was to collaborate with O&E and the UP railroads. We've had 8 meetings to date. The goal was to basically try and find some best practices, some gaps maybe in our planning and or execution to ultimately hit 6,000 lives here. There's been dialogue around the FP1 increasing in 2027, which we know is coming. The rail product will scale relationally. So how do we stay competitive as a service provider for you all? And so part of it was let's have some dialogue with UP, with O&E to make sure, number one, communication where it needs to be. And then, like I just mentioned, is there any gaps we need to fill? So key achievements from my perspective, the communication, and this is coming from UP, is the best they've seen, not only with YTI, but harbor-wide. They've both given us that feedback that day over day, week over week, communication's never been better. That's huge. I mean, a lot of times just people, one team isn't talking to the other, and that's where the issues arise. So we're glad we plugged that. However, we wanted more than that for this project. So throughput and departure times have improved, 3.7 increase in weekly throughput since launch date. But this is the big one, 36% improvement in on-time departures since launch date. So 56%, that's where it was on polls, up to 92%. And the reason that's important is when our smaller kind of fixed yard gets plugged up with, because they're not getting pulled timely, it has a downline impact on shift over shift. Get to late start, don't release enough cargo, et cetera, et cetera. So
what's your metric for timely departure? 8 hours?
12.
12 hours.
Yes, sir. UP has actually built a network dashboard with kind of like a green, red, yellow status on it. It's basically, hey, how plugged is the overall network in the LA basin, in the port? That gives us kind of a increased visibility to say, hey, are we going to start having some blockage getting our cargo here, et cetera? It starts to dialogue earlier, back to communication. We can start planning more effectively. That coupled with the improvement on the match back with O&E, which the dialogue's been very good with them. They're now staging certain empties in little pockets for us. Because we see a yellow or a red light, we start talking, can you get us empties here if it's clogged somewhere? Or if you don't have enough assets coming this way, they've put them on, the tracks pushed them in our way, and you're starting to see that 92% pull rate and our throughput increase. So overall, if I had to sum it up, we started and got a little off course early on into the project. I think we are moving at a good pace now. I'm very pleased with where we're currently at. Anything to add on that, Alan? Nope. Okay. Next project, rail capacity study. So I think Mura-san had reached out to us. We basically went out and selected a vendor. I believe TradePac did the same. There were some synergies there. We've selected Mercator to do a capacity study that encompasses, are there any bottlenecks outside our walls? Are there any bottlenecks inside our walls that are, again, keeping us from increasing our overall rail throughput? So we're prepped for right away, but come 2027 for sure, to stay competitive. We had several meetings to date. We do have a meeting, I believe, another one this week. The project team identified for it. They're collaborating. We've got all the information sharing. We've gotten our first draft back. It's about 100 pages. I wrote down that we need to basically have what you guys are doing with Mercator, cover letter that kind of gives us a same thing you're doing with the port lease.
Yeah. No, I was just saying.
To sum up that 100-page findings, so we can kind of get some key takeaways from the study, and we'll present it your way once we're firmed up with it.
The summary and the raw data, the raw report?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to get into that. I'm interested to see exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I guess to add a little bit on this. This is one that was requested by O&E for us to look at this and look at we traditionally look at the rail network or the rail product within our fence line. The request came from the O&E ownership side to let's look at the whole network from here to outside the fence line, the local areas, which was a great idea because we've never done it before. And let's find out what works, what doesn't work, where the bottlenecks are, what things are that we may or may not be able to address. This is kind of a new venture for us. And I think from what we figured out, Trade Pack was tasked with the same thing. And so we had just trying to see if we get some synergies with a vendor on it. But we'll get this out to you, and I think it's a good study to do. But it was really kind of prompted by the ownership group of one. So we're working it. We'll get a good result. Get it when we get it. And prioritizing it.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a heightened, I appreciate the comments on the communication between yourselves and the one operations team. I think you're going to see a heightened attention to this in terms of trying to bring collaboration between the stakeholders, even more so than there is today.
All right, thank you. One more project, last but not least. So, update on the pool of pools. So, the shift with Flexi leaving the pool of pools, negotiations continue between us and them. We've shifted directions a little bit on what works for YTI. There's been a lot of internal dialogue, some dialogue with all three IEPs on what they're trying to do. Flexi's a bit ahead of the game versus DCLI and track. Latest YTI counter proposal was sent to them on April 23rd. We've gone back and forth on what they'd like to see, what we'd like to see from a financial standpoint, what's being covered, what it looks like operationally. The direction, the total cost remaining pool directions is key in this, because what do we do with the existing pool that wants to stay together for another 90 days versus what Flexi wants to do, and what's that look like? So current update is 247 total chassis for the pool have been received as of April 21st. So we've already partnered with them to remove some of their chassis. We're doing some work for them over at our east facility where we're painting the corner castings into the magenta O&E pool, our partnership with them. And we've taken over some bundles over there and we're storing them for them currently. We do have a couple meetings this week, and we met this morning too to try and get some finalization the next couple weeks with them on what the path forward looks like. What are they looking for? What is it we need to do to sign on the dotted line on what this looks like in the future? So it's definitely fluid. I think the biggest challenge, like I mentioned, is the two IEPs that are staying in the pool versus Flexi is a bit of a different dynamic, and what's that look like in this environment?
And you said you met with Flexi today?
No,
or the other pools?
we met internally today,
okay.
yeah, on what the path forward is, and with the hopes that by the end of next week, we should understand what our path forward is with Flexi.
Okay.
Any questions on any of the three projects or this one?
That's I think a flexible, O&E like a pool project. I think this is a really kind of we can get some financial benefit also, right?
We're trying. Yeah, we're trying.
Or O&E can get some
It is complicated.
It is.
There is, Flexi strategically is the partner that one has selected, and the cost per day is considerably less. There's a whole bunch of pieces that go into this. The reality is, I know that there's different needs here. I'd like to explain, actually, I was going to talk about this over again. I just want to have a casual conversation. Maybe even take off the board of director hat and put on one hat, and just because there's been extensive conversations internally, and I know that Ronnie's team has spoken to you guys, right? But a couple different times, right? Good detail, good back and forth. I know you guys have tried to protect your interests with Flexi versus the track DSCOI top model. The reality, this is going away, right? The reality is one has chosen a course. We just got to figure out how to navigate this successfully so that interests here are protected, but also conform with what, Mothership's direction is to some degree too, right? I understand that there's a little bit of a narrow beam to walk on here.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think my concern is moving this fast enough, because I know that one's plan, and to be frank, after 5 weeks in this role, so this plan was in place before I even showed up at the door, isn't part of the 90-day post June 1st, right? You've already said they're starting to cycle through stuff. I know that there's a certain sense of urgency attached to this on the side.
But it's, my point is actually that definitely it's has to be a benefit for the YTI, this thing. I mean, right?
There has to be a mutual benefit, right?
Mutual means
overall has to be plus.
Should be, right? That is more like obviously what kind of benefit YTI get and ONE get. So that's got to be more like a bigger visual.
Which is why I want to have that conversation.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah.
Where your guys stand.
So I agree with you, Susan, and I agree with you also. There's a an urgency to it, and I think the answer is that on the urgency piece is that obviously Flexi has made plans to handle this without having this established yet through their new Dock Street pool. They've shared that with me that they are prepared to start June 1st working out of their new dock, what they call their new dockyard, which is the AIM yard, which is a little bit before you get to our
2 blocks away.
which is right before you get to our YTI East yard. So
Well briefed on this.
yeah, so they've got a plan on that urgency piece, and I think and I've had several conversations with senior leadership of Flexi that we understand it's not going to be ready. We've got a plan to cover ourselves, but we still need to get a dedicated pool for you set up. Which gets into Susie, I think your concern here or point about it's got to be a win for everybody, including us. And we think there's a way there for that. I think we got a little slow on this ourselves because I don't think we were given the right priority that we should have. And we got a little bogged down with Flexi, and then I think that now we're starting to get back to where we need to be to get this thing to where we can get a win for everybody. Flexi's kind of changed their direction a little bit on us along the way. Threw a couple curveballs we didn't expect, and that set us back a little bit on how we handle that. But I think we can get there to where we can get something that works, because the world's going to be different moving forward. And we're sensitive to that. And we've got to make sure it works for all the shipping lines that call here. It works for the IEPs that support those shipping lines. And that we also take care of this new dedicated model for you all, that we get that done. So a lot of moving parts to it, but I think we can get there based on how dialogues have gone for the last couple of weeks. Although we're not there yet. But I think we can get there.
There's some time.
Yeah.
A lot.
We can talk offline on that some more if you want.
I would.
Okay. Anything else on operations?
There's no questions. Thank you.
Any other questions on operations? Okay. We're coming down the home stretch here. Before we hand the commercial over to the very capable HCA, we have 5 pages of photos in here. And I want to highlight this because you know, sometimes we throw them in, sometimes we throw them out. We really did this, Tim, we did it for you.
I enjoyed looking.
Okay. We
You
need
guys
you.
haven't noticed, I've read your deck. And
You did, I didn't know, I picked up on
In
that, yeah.
detail.
No, I like that.
I liked your pictures.
Good. So-
Thank you.
But we kind of did that for your benefit, because we've been sharing them over the course of the board. You know, we do a little bit here and there, we don't do as much as we did this time, but we really, last time we kind of did a lot too, but we really did this for your benefit, coming new into the board from the commercial side, that's what we did. You won't typically see this many photos in a board package. So, that disclaimer, HJ, bring us home.
That was my unscript, we already did it. So I brought some good visual to entertain your eyes that you did very high, look at the chart and numbers. I have some visuals. So our kind of top of the line tour program has been successful. That as you see that we got 44 visitors last quarter. And then actually the third quarter we got 42. So we got total 86 visitors have been past 6 months. The annualized 108, over 108 visitors last year. So the number of visitors are growing, and also we have a lot of repeating customers to bring the new faces, new people to educate the group that they love our program. And some of our customers, even though they have no volume at YTI, but they come here to understand how the port works, and then but we'll continue to promote our brand to our customers, make sure that they have a good experience and they got some good perception about YTI, and also learn a lot good about how YTI operate and treat our customers. Okay. And the next slide is a one-page slide that I reflect on one of the changes that they I think you asked me to show that what the turn time looks like. So for your reference, that it's a Harbor Truckers Association turn time. The needed is average visit time that truckers to spend to complete their job at each terminal. That doesn't include the waiting time and outside. And then YTI, as you see, that has been very consistent throughout the year. That actually, I just got April figures that April we got 63 minutes. So one of the benefit that I continuously getting from our customer is YTI performance is very consistent throughout the year. So if you look at the orange line, some terminals are up and down significantly. We are very consistent. That's one benefit. That way, our customer who are supply chain designers, they can assign their work and then they perform their job, and then that's a really good feedback. And also, looking at all the magenta bar, other terminals, YTI has been very consistent in that matter. And also, I show the percentage of HTA truckers versus our total transactions. So it appears that about 5% of our truckers come to YTI is providing this GPS data for HTA to calculate the numbers. So I reflect that going forward, I will continue to show that how the HTA numbers look like. Any question about the turn times?
I do want to make a remark that YTI's reputation is for one of consistency. I'm coming over from the MNC side. And one of the things the customers have learned to value over the last decade or so is their end terminals, right, where they bring their cargo, especially inbound-wise. And when they start going through the list of terminals, YTI inevitably is in the good column, is in the consistent column. You guys are you're an asset. You're a positive asset in the industry. You're a positive asset to one. I'm just going to say that very clearly to you. And selling YTI is relatively easy compared to some of the other things that we do, and you deserve the credit for that.
Yeah.
I think the turn time here is a perfect example of that.
Right. Yeah. So this will.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. And we'll continue focus on this one and then communicate with the BCO and the customer. Thank you. Okay, so import direct time trend, because last year, quarter by quarter, there's some movement in the import direct time. There's a number of days that the import local containers, how long they stay. The interesting part was observation between the difference between the AP1 and FP1. Obviously, FP1 was new customer, and we were worried about what their behavior looks like. But in fact, the FP1, AP1 was really good coexist, and actually new customer, PS7, AP1, actually supplement in a good ways. Number one, our FPO customers are heavily utilizing day shift appointments, and they don't come at night. But this PS7, this Taiwanese carrier customer heavily composed of NVOCC, they are willing to come at night. So actually we got more utilization at night. And as you see that this AP1, this PS7, their overall dwell time is less than those of FPO. So it's give us more efficiency and the utilization of the operation, which is going to be a little bit positive. So last quarter, the Q4 was more coming back to the beginning of Q1 that there, our keyword I would call is normalizations. The way you work in the appointment and the way you work the dwell time, I think it's back to normalization. Only cover I got was impacted by, China tariff issues that we will figure out how to deal with, those changes. But up until March, that we had some good trend coming back to normalization. Only thing is that because of the China issue, that there's some BMS that we have 1 or 2 weeks that have no major trans-Pacific trade, that we have to come up with some high number of gate closures and those numbers. But overall, as an analyst, I think there's good to say is normalization in place. So will be interesting how we see the next 3 months that this China tariff impact will affect the behaviors of customer. But so far, it's a little bit effective there. Any questions? Thank you. And then the commercial strategy, Hapag-Lloyd, I think Koyama-san brought up some instruction, and then some of board members gave me 6 months ago that now Hapag-Lloyd is exiting via alliance. We're gonna make sure there was some good contract in place. So to make long story short, that we bump up their rate by $50, and we thought it was very challenging goal. But we realized that Hapag-Lloyd was really struggle dealing with the rate renewal with the 32 container terminals because they exited the year and they need to get all the new contracts. So we reacted fast and engaged with Hapag-Lloyd and had discussions. So they give them a really reasonable contract plate and then understand their new governance requirement. We had a really good discussion and then engaged and then set the tone. So they accepted basically all the rate we offer. Only thing that we offer different from what we discussed with ONE teams is that we give them a $20 provisional discount on any extra loader we mutually agree to bring in YTI, we give them $20. But the Marex stay as it is with a $50 increase. So it turned out to be good, and then they enjoy the service at YTI, and then we got some great efforts with one Hapag-Lloyd going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. And next 5 slides is basically pictures of our customer, and then I think this has been very well perceived by all the group, and then we'll continue to engage with the customers, industry and non-industry and community, and make sure that this will be a really powerful tool.
Wow, Shipco, Walmart, some really cool people here.
Yes, sir. And there are some college students and high school kids, and the Boy Scout and local community, and we will continue that. And also we have
with the Boys Club, big smile on your face.
we got also continuously coming from Japanese government and agency industry that we accommodate, and then show as this become like a showcase for Japanese industry regarding those zero emission technologies. Okay. The commercial strategy, obviously, along with the alliance effort to dealing with all the stakeholder industry, we're trying to show our brand name to the industry that we heavily engaged in the social media and also to improve the more followers and the data. So coming into 2025, we will be able to present some data analytics, that big data about how those keystroke and then those data is looking at. We are closing to that level in the next 2025. But so far, we got a good number of people, about 30%, 20% increase in those followers, post, we'll do that.
Yeah, I gotta go follow you right now. I didn't realize I wasn't following you. I can't do that.
Yeah, okay.
You know, they said to the website 2 years ago, this is a blank page.
Yeah.
We weren't doing any of this, and we're now on the path of being social media influencers, maybe down the road here, but.
Excellent.
but
I'm
this
gonna
is-
go join.
Yeah, but this has been a.
I'll tell all my kids to go spread
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Let it go viral.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of work on this one.
So also, you know, the community activity that we offer, the college and high school intern summer program to begin and have them good at you at this social media thing, you're gonna take advantage of their skill set to use that. Okay. Okay, last one, the IT strategy, that, this is an item that we had an ONE audit, mid last year, that they do the audit and then they point out that our cybersecurity need to be a little bit upgraded according to standard of the ONE. So we engaged with the ONE audit and got a results, and then we commit ourselves to improve our cybersecurity, and then we will follow up. And I think actually last week we give them a final update that we finished the SOC 1 compliance, and then we presented our certificate to the ONE audit, and also that we improve some of our cybersecurity measures, how we handle our softwares account, how we handle our device, and also how we handle those data, ensure that we implemented those items. Well, now, I think coming into 2025, we got some guideline from Coast Guard, cybersecurity, some requirement that we'll implement that one and present it to the board next board meeting about what our 2025 strategy to implement the cybersecurity as well. But this is more likely our action we have taken and share with the ONE, and then kind of report that where we are on this cybersecurity.
If I can add just one comment, was I attended the NIMSA meeting, Maui meeting, National Association of Water Front Employers meeting, and they had the Coast Guard present there, and they made a presentation about cybersecurity, and they had this handout they had, like a pamphlet they had done on an assessment of cybersecurity in the maritime industry and stuff. And they spoke for probably about 25 minutes, and by the time they got done talking, I was scared to death. If you have not done a cybersecurity tabletop exercise, you're in trouble. And so they left about 5. They didn't have enough for everyone. They only had like 5 these exams. They kind of laid them around. And as the room cleared out, I'm like, I can get one of those. And no one took one with them. There were like 5 laying on the chair. They went and grabbed one and said, I'm taking that back. HJ, we got to. They said, they scared the crap out of me on this cybersecurity, which there's enough going on in the world that you don't necessarily need that. And then talking to one of them afterwards, talking about the cybersecurity thing, I said, we've got to do a tabletop. And we talked about it. I said, we'll do one. We're going to tee that up for this year. So, and the goals and objectives to get a tabletop done. But we need to ramp up because we kind of do the normal things that everybody else is doing. But let's figure out what that next level of cybersecurity, make sure we have the assessments done. We've done an assessment on cybersecurity. We've done all this stuff for the last few years. But let's do a tabletop, see what comes out of that, and just make sure that we've done everything that we can do to protect ourselves, which, there's probably some gaps there. So just want to share that.
You guys have a business continuity plan?
Yes.
You do?
We do. And we've had a cybersecurity
So it should
assessment.
be part of it, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And we've done all kinds of things, but we've never done like a true tabletop. And the Coast Guard was really big on that. And we said, okay, and it's all right.
I know one does one once a year, once every 18 months, something like that. I don't know if anybody in the room here is involved in it. I have in the past. The tabletop side, they run through an actual drill.
Yeah, drill, yeah.
And it's actually quite illuminating.
It is.
So, I mean, one of your primary stakeholders, I don't know what they have to call them, but there's some expertise there if you want to tap into it. I'm quite sure that BTIT group who runs it would be happy.
We might find out who you're using for that, what vendor you use for
A
that.
lot of it's internal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very similar as all over the world actually, so talking about the securities. Then is it kind of an extra like a capex we need to spend for the like upgrading our systems?
I don't think we have that.
We have
It's an external CapEx. Well,
We have a copy 2024, we already have that one.
yeah.
To create the network layer, we already have that one in 2024.
Okay.
Approve it, we're gonna spend the money, about $300,000.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of items in 2025 as well.
Okay, that's kind of a million or less than million type of investment, or more than like $1 million or
No, it's not
small investment.
Yes, sir, these are like hardware plus software.
Okay.
We want to have that one in
So
2025.
because of just some ports, some terminals, is start implementing is charging a new surcharge for cyber securities.
Oh, okay.
So then I mean always when we asking how much they spend for the extra money for the upgrading like a system, but always we don't get any answer from terminals port. But they try to charge actually, to the customer to recover that kind of extra investment. Well, that's quite a natural thing, but it's a small, if that's a small money, it's difficult to justify, right? To implement a new surcharge. So, but it's all depend actually, like system upgrading, but also like market situations. So other terminals start, charging this kind of,
Sure.
surcharge. It's better to watch, actually try to implement new surcharge. Of course, impact to the ONE though, but again, we can get into some others.
Yes, sir. I'll keep an eye on activities of
Yeah.
other terminals, especially here is that 12 terminals that if someone doing that is spread out very quickly, so be the first guy is going to be very challenging too.
Right,
So
right.
I'll watch how they go. Yes.
Not only here, it's maybe on all over the US, both Tacoma, Seattle, New York side, and East Coast, we got the same.
Yes, sir.
Any questions, comments on commercial IT, anything under? Okay.
Thank you.
Last section is 2024 cost savings. We're gonna have to turn anything here. We've done this every quarter. This is where we landed. We end up, I think we started out with 19 at the beginning of the year. We ended up with 24. Identified, we 9.9 million in savings achieved full year. Chassis 3.1, reefer 827. And gate closures were 61% of the savings, and all the details are in the spreadsheet behind it. I'm gonna make a comment here, is that, if we take another look at this budget, which we're gonna do, and we go to get over 50 million, if we're doing it right, there are no cost savings initiatives. There really is not a level of additional cost savings initiatives. We're squeezing everything, throw everything in there. That there's a shift in the business from what we expect, and there might be some that trickle down. But just to kind of preface as we go forward, that we're really gonna look at this stuff and figure out if there's something we missed, so we get everything in the budget we can get in the budget. So just kind of a look ahead on that. But any questions on the cost savings initiatives to close out the year?
I mean, appreciate your initiative and also achievement.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The only other thing that we have in the appendix is the emergency CapEx for the frog for the rail yard. I think that was already approved. So I just want to bring that up and say thank you for the approval on that. It's a safety issue and a major issue for us, and we're going to start the procurement process to get that done. And last thing I'll say, Jim, before I turn it back over to you, is we appreciate the support of the board with OD as a customer to bring volume to us. The effort, Suji, yourself, and others to get the AP1 over here. Which we're excited to get, the first 13,500 TU shipped to have on a weekly basis. And we think we got it for another year here. We're excited to have it. We love our service base that we have. We love the services we have. We love the customers we have. And a lot of success in this package, and that success was driven by, we couldn't have done it without the customer. And so thank you so much for everything. And we couldn't have done it without a supportive board as we've come into come to you guys and ask for things over the year. And you saw some things about staffing that we added and a couple other things in there. So I just want to say our 2024 was successful because of our customers and the board support that we've had. And I just want to say thank you for that on behalf of the YTI team.
Yeah.
And we look forward to 2025.
Thank you very much, from our side actually. So, best performance ever in 2024. Then this year's, will be challenging,
Yep.
right? It's will be challenging. We know actually, so our shipping industry also, need to face a very big challenge. This year, also terminal may be the same. So actually, more need to collaborate with each other. Actually, and need to keep communicating closely what will be happen in the future and what we are planning, like a vessel voyage and grand voyage, blah 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 blah, and what we can do for the support of our here like this. So I think the more like a close communication from operation side and your operation teams and the commercial side is more important actually. Then we need to face and the big challenge together, to overcome this challenge together. Then hopefully we can achieve over 50 millions dividend this year at the final stage. So then maybe we can celebrate it again. Okay. Thank you very much. And
you.
your support and your cooperations, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And understood. Understood.
Thank you, Suji-san. Now maybe we'll open up to the floor to see if there's any other matters to be brought up before we adjourn.
Next board meeting,
Yeah.
August 21st.
August
August 21.
Or 20th, depending on, did we have a conversation saying we might need more time on the other end?
No, it's just 20th was a Thursday, or 21st was a Thursday, right? So it was travel and pre-meet on Wednesday the 20th, and then meet on the 21st.
Got it. Thank you.
You want to slide us back into the morning slot?
Time TBD. Time slot to be determined. We'll let you know.
We're happy with either one.
But anyways, lunch is the same anyway. Lunch is the same anyway.
Yeah.
And
If nothing else, then we have to
Close the meeting.
Close the meeting.
We'd like to hope we invite you all to dinner. I think y'all are open for dinner, and we're going to go to a new place. We're going to the Sky Room, which is on top of the Fairmont Hotel, which is right downtown Long Beach. Anyone needs any instruction, let us know, or needs a ride, let us know. We look forward. They're going to be ready for us when we get there. So when we get there, they'll be ready for us.
where is the entrance on the side street there? Do
No,
you-
it's you go through it's not like the old days. You go in through the Fairmont Hotel, through the front door of the Fairmont Hotel.
Car. Where do
Yeah,
you park?
I think it's going to be
Where do you park?
valet, I think.
Valet, okay.
Which I'm not a huge fan of
And
valets.
is that on Ocean or is that?
On Ocean.
It is on Ocean as well, right out in front. So you just go there, park it out, and then walk into the front door and go upstairs.
Go to the top. It's it's funny because the old days it was that side.
There was a
entrance.
side door.
They have completely renovated the whole thing, turned it to a hotel. Made it nice.
That side door entrance was kind of.
I kinda liked it.
It was definitely old school.
I kind of liked it. Even that old rickety elevator.
Yeah.
It had the gate that closed on it.
Yeah,
I
no,
liked
it was a throwback.
We thought we might have a nice sunny Southern California afternoon. And that's why we picked a place with a great view. But
We haven't had sun for a couple of weeks. It's been very
it's been
odd.
horrible. Horrible. I'm sure you guys don't want to hear that. New Jersey, even worse. Thank you, man.